Everybody to the Ada County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Today's Thursday, February 9th, 2023. And I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and then we'll have roll call. Brenda Blitman is here. Commissioner Exton?
Here.
Commissioner Retzlaff is absent. Commissioner Birch?
Here.
Commissioner Wickstrom is absent. Commissioner Scott?
Here.
And then Commissioner Colson.
Here.
So we've taken roll. We appreciate that. I'm going to look to the commissioners. We'd like to think about rearranging the agenda to provide a more efficient meeting. Commissioner Exton.
Madam Chair, I would like to move to rearrange the agenda to have project 202202476 PCCPA at the end of the agenda.
So there's been a motion to move the unfinished business for Spring Rock Development to the end of the agenda. All those is there a second for that motion?
A second.
Commissioner Scott seconded the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we'll rearrange the agenda. Our first item tonight will be new business, which is project number 2022-03006. And Mr. Danielson's going to present that project.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, project number 2022-03006S is a preliminary plat for a two-lot subdivision in the Rural Preservation District. The property is located at 13400 East Orchard Ranch Lane and contains 79.02 acres. Lot 1 will consist of 40 acres and Lot 2 will consist of 39.02 acres. The two lots will take access from East Orchard Ranch Lane, which is an existing private road. The subject property was created through a one-time division. This one-time division divided the southeast quarter of Section 18 of Township 1 South, Range 4 East, into two resultant parcels. This quarter section of land was part of a land patent dating back to 1895. Under the United States Public Land Survey System, a section is an area of 1 square mile consisting of 640 acres. Therefore, a quarter section of land should be 160 acres. When the applicant surveyor did the survey for the one-time division of the quarter, it was discovered that the quarter section was only 159.02 acres. It has been determined that the property was reduced through governmental action and that the 79.02 acre parcel is conforming and can be divided into approximately two 40-acre lots. The subject property is located in the Wildland Urban Fire Interface Overlay District. A fire protection plan has been prepared for the proposed subdivision. There will be a defensible space zone of 50 feet around each structure. All roofs must be Class A and non-reflective. Building siding of metal, masonry, stone, or brick are encouraged. Each residential dwelling is required to have fire sprinkler systems meeting NFPA 13D. There will be a plat note on the final plat requiring the property owners to comply with the fire protection plan. In addition, the subject property is also located in the Area of Military Influence Overlay District. The primary purpose of this overlay district is to provide notification areas to ensure that the Idaho National Guard officials are made aware of land use applications within the Area of Military Influence Overlay District. The proposed subdivision is within a buffer area surrounding the Orchard Combat Training Center, which is to the south of the proposed subdivision. The application was transmitted to appropriate agencies such as Idaho National Guard, Mountain Home Military Base, and the Boise Airport. There will be a plat note on the subdivision plat informing property owners of the subdivision's proximity to the military installation. There are no neighbor objections to the subdivision. For agency comments, the Idaho Department of Fish and Game mentioned that the property is surrounded by numerous slick spot pepper grass, occurrences and observations, and as conditioned prior to any site improvements being made, the applicant will need to have a qualified professional survey the building pad and the driveway location for slick spot pepper grass. The Ada County building official replied that the building division has no objection and that the applicant should be aware a building permit will be required for all new structures over 200 square feet. Staff finds that this application complies with the A County Code and the A County Comprehensive Plan, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. What questions do the commissioners have? I don't think we have any questions. Let's go ahead and ask the applicant to come forward.
Good evening. I want to thank you for taking this matter up tonight. We're excited to go forward with this project. So, do you have any questions of me on this project?
What questions do the commissioners have?
Madam Chair, do we need his name and address?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah, your name and address.
I'm sorry.
For the official records.
My name is Paul Stroud. My address is 8968 South Black Cat Road in Nampa.
Any questions from the commissioners? I would ask, have you had a neighborhood meeting?
We did. We had that back in September.
Can you tell us a little bit about what some of the questions were, or how that went?
There weren't really a lot of questions. It was mainly just a time of getting to know the neighbors and visiting. They wondered when we would be moving out. We told them that's just up to this whole process. So, yeah, it was just a good time of visiting primarily.
Okay, any more questions? We'll go ahead and let you sit down.
Okay, thank you.
And the way the hearing works is that the applicant talks, and then we open it up for a public hearing. So is there anybody here who is here to talk about this application? You've got 3 minutes to say your piece. Go ahead and come forward. You come up forward to the mic, and then you give us your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes to tell us what you want to tell us. So thank you for coming down tonight.
My name is Daleen Early, and I'm currently living at 30,000 North Orchard Road, Access Road. I would like to know, on behalf of my family, I am from San Diego, but I'm up here for some medical reasons. But I would like to know, is any of this development going to impact the east side of the road? Because I know the orchard, the 13400 goes this way. My brother's property is, I think it's on the east side across from that. So my question is the subdevelopment and the, excuse me, and the, is this subdivision going to have any impact on that property as far as zoning laws and water issues, anything like that?
So the way this works is that we don't answer questions, but you're certainly welcome to ask those questions. And then as we go through the process, the staff or the applicant will address those questions
Oh,
for you.
okay.
So,
Okay,
we've noted
I've
your-
never done this
Yeah, it's
before. So, all right, yeah, those are my questions.
and my question to you is, if we look at this picture that's up, can you give me a general understanding of where the property is that you're talking about?
It's going to be right in here.
Okay. So it's adjacent to that site plan. Okay, thank you very much, and we'll let the applicant and the staff address that. Anybody else that would like to ask or make comments about this project? So now we go back to the staff, and we ask questions of the staff. Any questions from the commissioners? And I would like to repeat that question, if you could re-explain
Sure.
what the zoning impact is and what the impact is to that particular house.
So, Madam Chair and Commissioners, the property is currently zoned rural preservation, and the zoning itself will remain rural preservation. So, rural preservation, typically it's one dwelling unit per 40 acres is kind of the density range that you see with the rural preservation district. And the applicant's proposed subdivision meets that density range of basically having one dwelling unit per 40 acres. The applicant will be basically just doing, basically dividing this piece up into basically two building sites. So I think in the applicant's detail letter, the applicant will live there, and then his son and daughter-in-law will live on the other lot. Overall, I don't believe that, this would have too much impact on the neighboring properties, because we're only adding, another additional residence to that private road. So the applicant himself actually permitted the private road itself, or East Orchard Ranch Lane. And so this will only be adding one additional lot to the private road itself. And then in terms of water, the applicant will need to obtain a well drilling permit from the Iowa Department of Water Resources. And the well drilling permit and the water right will have restrictions based on the Iowa Department of Water Resources. So there'll be, if it's a domestic water right, there'll be only a certain amount of area that they can use to irrigate lawn, et cetera. And then I'm here to answer any additional follow-up questions in regards to that.
Commissioners, Commissioner Birch?
So, Mr. Danielson, just to be clear, so what is going to be done with Mr. Stroud's property will have zero impact on the zoning of any other property down there?
That is correct. I mean, so the zoning remains the same. There's no zone change at all with this application.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, before I forget, this presentation I gave out will be known as Exhibit Number 29, so just so that we get that in the record.
Thank you. Let the minutes reflect that that's exhibit number 29 that's added to the records. Any other questions? Okay, then we ask the applicant to come forward and answer any further rebuttal questions.
From you folks or from the?
From anybody.
Okay.
Your chance to provide any more comments.
Okay. The only thing I would say is, yeah, all we're doing is just putting a couple houses there for us and for our kids. And Brent had mentioned the water. We will be drawing off a shared well. The property directly to the west is another son's property. He and his wife live there, and we have a well that was put in last year, and so we will be sharing that well.
So you're telling me that there's not going to be an additional well
No.
drilled?
No.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, go ahead and you can sit down.
Thank you.
And this closes the public hearing. And so I'll go ahead and look to the commissioners for a motion, and then we'll go forward with more discussion. Commissioner Birch?
I will make a motion. Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained in the staff report, the commission recommends approval of project number 2022-02-94-CPA-ZC-ZC-ZOA to the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you very much.
I'll second it. Commissioners, I
been-
think there might be you might have a different project number that you need to read into
Yeah.
that motion.
Is it the marks?
Would have been number 1 under new business,
The marks.
2022-03-006.
The marked lands
Oh,
today.
okay. Am I in the wrong one then? Oh, yes,
We'll do a redo.
do a redo when I can find it.
Okay.
Somebody else may be able to do it quicker before I can get there.
Can't find it, that's the problem. There we go.
Commissioner Exton is usually pretty quick on it.
Yeah?
Are you ready?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Exton?
Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, I recommend approval of project 2022-03-006S to the board, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A in the preliminary plat dated December 29th, 2022.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Colson. Go ahead and discuss it.
I mean, this seems like a pretty straightforward application. Again, with the slick spot pepper grass, there will be the surveys that are done and all of that. So again, this seems like a pretty standard subdivision that we've seen before.
Commissioner Birch?
No, I agree completely.
Commissioner Colson?
I agree 100%. I mean, it's just splitting into 2 dwellings, so they're not doing it taking it any further than that.
Commissioner Scott?
I have nothing to add.
I'll go ahead and call for the questions. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of this motion say aye.
Aye.
And I'll say aye. and all those opposed say nay. And let the minutes reflect that the commissioners voted for this project. Thank you. Our next project up is 2022-01390. And Mr. Lindstrom is going to be telling us about the project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Application before you is 2022-01390-CU. Applicant is JGT Architecture. Start you off with a vicinity map here. The property is just north of the Meridian LDS Temple, if you're familiar with that area. We're off of Linder Road here near Eagle Island. So this is a conditional use application for an indoor riding arena and equestrian facility. The property is located at 2333 West Duck Alley Road and contains a total of 57.3 acres in the rural urban transition district. So Spurwing Stables is an existing commercial equestrian facility and boarding center that operates off Duck Alley Road. Back in 2007, a conditional use was approved for stables and a riding arena for the site as a private use only. That permit ultimately expired as the building permit plans for the arena were rejected with the plan review. And then over the years, classes, training, boarding, and equestrian events have taken place, and an expansion of the facility is now proposed for the site. Due to the commercial nature of the facility and the applicant's wish to continue using the property for classes, training, boarding, and equestrian-related events, a new conditional use is required, and that's why it's before you tonight. So the site currently includes a single-family residence, and I'll do my best to highlight these with my cursor, but there's an existing single-family residence here and some personal storage buildings that surround it. We also have a, let's see, right in here, a 7,250 square foot barn. And then also on the site, just to the east of that, there is a 2,000 square foot agricultural structure. To the north, we have some existing eventing stalls. They're not highlighted here because I believe those are to be removed, as it's noted here. Then we also have various smaller horse sheds throughout the property that are just for private use only. One of those horse sheds will be demolished where a future structure is going to be located. And then lastly, an existing structure here is a 1,500 square foot hay barn that's going to remain. So in addition to these existing structures that are going to remain, the applicant proposes kind of a two-phased approach to add some additional structures. So phase one is going to include a 9,500 square foot horse stable. That's in this area here. Up here to the north, very northwest part of the screen, there's going to be some eventing stalls. And then back down here, we have a 2,800 square foot walker building. And then phase two of the plan is to build an additional horse stable down here where the other one is proposed, and then this larger indoor riding arena. And that riding arena is, as part of their submittal, it said about 60,000 square feet, and that's going to be a covered indoor riding arena. The site currently has various, outdoor arena spaces, some cross-country courses and with gates and jumps. A new outdoor riding arena and dressage court are also going to be added. Those are noted up in here. The property, as you see here on the map, is within the flood hazard overlay district. And so the areas within red that are hashed that go along the northern property line, that's the floodway of the Boise River. And then those areas in blue, it was zone AE, or the 100-year floodplain. So any development or construction of new structures within that blue area, that's, as you go back, some of those are proposed within that blue area. Those will require a floodplain application at that time. So let's see here. In addition to the structures, there are some parking areas that are provided You can kind of see them here. There's 10 proposed spaces and 4 ADA parking spaces. There's also some temporary event parking up here for trailers and other passenger vehicles when they have their weekend equestrian facility events. The applicant noted in their detailed letter that they will have some weekend events, but generally speaking, the main majority of the use is for training and classes and boarding of horses. Let's see here. We have the Meridian Fire District did weigh in, and they'd like to see a more detailed turnaround plan for emergency access, and the applicants in their presentation is going to share that updated plan with you tonight. If we go forward here, this is the Meridian future land use map. The property is within Meridian's impact area. It is designated as low-density residential. There is a small area here that's also noted as being civic, and there's a planned park up here to the north. In general, this low-density residential is intended for densities of 3 dwelling units or less per acre. As a proposed arena and the equestrian facility provides the gathering place and recreational amenity for the community, it is compatible with the land use map. The City of Meridian did weigh in. They just wanted the applicant to know that there's a future proposed pathway. It's going to be somewhere in the general vicinity. They didn't have any conditions with that. They just wanted the applicant to be aware, and the applicant was willing to, hear that out when that time comes. There's some key conditions here that pertain to the project. Like I said earlier, any grading or construction within the flood hazard overlay district will require a floodplain application. That'll be for each structure. The applicant will also have to comply with Meridian Fire, Central District Health. They're going to have to approve the septic system. And lastly here, the Highway District, they did have some site-specific and standard conditions of approval that the applicant will have to follow. We did keep that fairly broad, and it sounds like the applicant would like to appeal one of ACHD's conditions relating to the canal that runs through the property. If I go back here, one more, along Duck Alley Road, there is a canal that runs through, and this is maintained by the Eureka Water District. The applicant can tell you more about this, but essentially ACHD in their standard conditions states that any irrigation canals and facilities shall be moved outside of the right-of-way. This area in Duck Alley Road is supposed to be widened, so it's really up to the irrigation district to handle that, not necessarily the applicant. So the applicant is going to appeal that to ACHD directly. So I don't believe, if they were to appeal, this condition should remain the same and cover that. Just some additional info. You'll see on your order page there that states there's a master site plan. That's incorrect. There's no master site plan with this application. It's just a conditional use permit. So as part of your motion, just make sure to redact that from the order page that you have there. And then lastly, we have the phasing plan that I stated. Right now we have condition number 12 in your draft findings. It's kind of a blanket statement here. We'd like to, I think, narrow that down a little bit more because the applicant has not proposed any dates for that phasing plan at this time. As part of their testimony tonight, I think they're going to provide you with some options maybe, but in the past we've done 5 years, 2 years, just depends on what you're comfortable with. But phase 1, as you recollect, is most of the facility. And then phase 2 is going to include that riding arena. So if you want to add more to that condition number 12, you're more than welcome to do so. Overall, staff is recommending approval with conditions, and I'll stand for any questions that you have.
Thank you. What questions do you have? I have a question about the ACHD late exhibit that came in.
Yeah, you bet.
Did you have a chance to review that and incorporate that into?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I did incorporate into the record as an additional exhibit the condition, and I can read it. It's standard condition of approval number 1. Says that all proposed irrigation facilities shall be located outside the ACHD right-of-way, including easements. And this is the standard condition that the applicant has some issues with, and I believe that they're going to address with ACHD, but they can maybe talk to you more about that.
I just need a little bit of education on the ACHD report. It says that Linder Road is going to be at an F, which is not meeting the minimum standard, which is E. And so, so what makes us think it's okay to approve this if ACHD is saying it's an F in terms of traffic impact?
Madam Chair, that's a great question. So Lindard Road, as part of their requirements as well, the applicant is supposed to dedicate additional right-of-way. So it sounds like 62 feet from center line. So that's one way to hopefully widen the road in the future. You know, they're going to gain that right-of-way. In addition, there's a current project in place, and I don't know where that is, and it's along the way, but to the south of this project, up the hill past the temple or near the temple, there's some additional widening that's going to be starting, and I think it's supposed to go further to the north. I don't know if we have, maybe the applicant can speak more to that, but I think currently it is an F, if you will, but there are plans to already mitigate those impacts and widen that road in the future.
So if I were to put it into my words, the applicant is making some contributions to fix that problem, which should help make it be not an F.
Madam Chair, that is correct. Yep, definitely with the right-of-way dedication, they're also going to provide, or this is part of the conditions of approval from ACHD, they're to provide $12,500 road trust deposit in lieu of constructing a 5-foot wide sidewalk. So either they can provide a sidewalk or they can provide further money to hopefully widen that roadway and maintain it.
Okay. What other questions do we have? Any questions?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
With the amendment or the proposed amendment to condition 12, can you just give like a rough example perhaps of what adding that time frame would actually look like?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Exton. So as it states now, it just basically says that the applicant shall comply with the phasing plan. Right now, the phasing plan just says that they're going to have 2 different phases. And so we don't really have a timeline there or any years. So you could add on, you could say something to the effect that the phasing plan shall consist of phase 1 being completed within 2 years and phase 2 within 5 years. Or I don't know, Leon, if you want to touch more on that.
Yeah, Chairman Commissioner, I think Connor gave a great example, and probably testimony from the applicant will give you a better idea of timeframes that they feel are achievable. So based on that testimony, you could craft a condition to update this more generalized condition. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? We'll go ahead and ask the applicant to come forward, give us your name and address, and
Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Jared Walgren. I'm with JGT Architecture, representing the applicant. My address is 1135 12th Avenue Road in Nampa. Connor did a good job of kind of laying out the scope of the project. A little history behind the property. Started out as a residential property for the owners, and they used it for the care and feeding of their personal horses, and it gradually evolved into this facility where they provide space for horse trainers to train their equestrian students on dressage, show jumping, and cross-country events. Really, the property is ideal for this use. The surrounding area is pretty compatible. There's softball fields and a golf course. It's a very outdoor area, great spot for some open green space. And this contributes well to that compatibility. Being in the floodplain where everything is kind of largely an outdoor use and exterior type barns and stuff with horses, there's minimal impact if flooding were ever an issue. To get to the question regarding phasing, it's kind of been identified in the staff. We've had a couple iterations as 2 phases. It'll probably be a little bit more fluid than that. The intent, as soon as we get approval here, would be to construct the Walker Building, which I guess this laser doesn't work very well on the laser. But it's the round building there, kind of in the middle. That'll happen right away, and that'll be followed by probably the additional outdoor arena spaces to the north. And, you know, as soon as they can and as soon as it makes sense financially and with the market and how well it's received by the students and people using the facility, they'll try to grow it as quickly as they can. The stable would probably follow after that, and I think if you go to the next sheets, we've done some concept elevations for what that stable might look like. Followed by, you know, the eventing stalls, all of that they think should probably happen within like a 5-year time period. The indoor arena, that's a little bit more of a dream element that they would like to include and would do it as soon as possible, but it could likely happen after that. So I don't know what the appropriate way to allow for that in your approval would be, but that's kind of the rough time frame. And getting to the ACHD issue, we've read through the staff report and conditions and agree with all of them. There was the one issue with the language in the ACHD report that was kind of a blanket standard condition that all irrigation must be moved outside of the right-of-way. And there was some confusion on the term where it referred to easements as well. There are no ACHD easements there, so I've actually, just as recently as today, discussed it with ACHD staff. And they've essentially said, we're not gonna make you move the canal. I think we're good on all of that, but I think we just wanted to have it noted that that would be a pretty major ask to move those canals. And I think we're close and we're getting it worked out. So if we can get it worked out with ACHD and that is still applicable to this, as long as their conditions change to confirm that, I think we're okay. And with that, if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you very much.
And the owner is also here if you have specific questions about the operation of the facility.
Okay, I'll go ahead and look to the commissioners. Questions do we have? Any questions? I have a question. Is there going to be a residential component there long-term?
Yes, I mean, it's there. It's kind of the residential manager of the site that oversees it, that the current house that's there is intended to stay.
And then in the discussion, we talked about the ACHD conditions. Generally, from our perspective, we just say that you have to meet ACHD conditions. We don't get down to the nuances of what those might be.
Understood.
So we won't be noting that in the, I doubt if we'll be noting that in the records. Any other questions? Did you have a neighborhood meeting?
We did.
Tell us about it.
Nobody showed up.
Nobody showed up. One of
Yep.
those blank
One of those,
neighborhood
yep.
meetings. Okay. We'll go ahead and let you sit down, I think, if there's no more questions, and then we'll let anybody else talk.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now's the time in the meeting, if somebody wants to talk about this project, they can come forward and talk for 3 minutes. If there's anybody out there? So now our questions will go back to the staff, and then we'll ask for the applicant to come forward. Can you tell me if this is making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, or if this is something we're doing? Is it forever with the property, or is it with a 5-year renewal?
So, Madam Chair, it stops with you unless the application were to get appealed. This is a normal, just conditional use permit. So generally with a conditional use permit, and you'll see it in your findings, it's, if approved, then the applicant would have 2 years to meet all the conditions and actually start to build. They can obtain a building permit within 2 years and not necessarily finish building till after that, but they at least have to obtain a building permit and finish most of the conditions, if not all, prior to that 2-year timeline. After 2 years, if they still haven't completed those conditions, then they can file for a 1-year administrative time extension. And still after then, if they haven't completed the conditions, they could come forth with an ask to the board for a 2-year additional time extension. So, if this is approved, it will maintain with the property in perpetuity. There's no 5-year cap on it like you might see with some contractors' yards in the RUT districts. Does that answer your questions?
It does, I think. Any other questions, Commissioner Birch?
I have a question along the same lines. So if the applicant wants to phase this project and do each component of it, complete that, and then see whether or not there's a need to go further, can we approve the entire project, and let's say it takes them 4, 5, 10 years to get it done? Do they have to do it within the 2-year time frame, or can they take however long it takes them to accomplish what they ultimately want to achieve?
Right. Madam Chair, Commissioner Birch, so if there was not a phased approach to it, let's just say they were approved tonight for, the project, they would have to obtain building permits for each of the structures and complete the conditions within 2 years, unless they, kept getting additional time extensions. But what's nice about the phasing plan is it does allow them, or allows you to rather extend it out. So you could do two different plans, or I'm sorry, you could do 2 or 3 different phases. It's just up to you. But as part of their submittal, they did say it was going to be generally a 2-phase plan, but they did not put any parameters on the years. So that's where I guess we come to you and hope that you can provide something.
What other questions do you have? Okay, I think we'll ask the applicant to come forward, and I think if you could address the anticipated phasing, that would be good.
Madam Chair, thank you. With respect to the phasing, I think all of the smaller buildings that have been identified as the phase 1, I think that if we can request that that's accomplished within a 5-year time period, and then I don't know if we can do an option for an extension on phase 2 after that 5-year time period. Seems like what that is in line with the owner's thinking on the project. If you have any other questions, I'd be glad to discuss.
What other questions do the commissioners have? I had a question about the pathway, the potential pathway to the parks in City of Meridian. City of Meridian's got a pretty defined pathway project. So what were your conversations with the City of Meridian about potential access?
Honestly, we haven't had conversations. I think the only time we saw that was in the staff report that referred to it. So I honestly am not all that familiar with the plans for the pathway. Obviously, it's in a comprehensive plan that sort of includes some of the property, and it is an area of the property that has no structures or anything built on it. So I'm assuming we can certainly be flexible in talking with the city to accommodate what they might have in mind in the future. So that I don't think from the sliver that you showed on the map, it looked like that was essentially not a part of the property where there would be any structures built.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? So I think we'll go ahead and let you sit down.
Okay,
and
thank you.
We'll have some discussions. So this closes the public hearing for this project, and I'll look to a commissioner for a motion to approve the project, table the project, or deny the project.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Scott.
based upon the facts, or findings of fact and conclusions of law contained here in the testimony from the public hearing, I recommend the commission approves project number 2022-0139-0-CU, subject to the conditions of the approval attached. I believe I'm also recommending to strike the master site plan from that order, as well as proposing the phases of the initial phase of 5 years with a potential option to extend afterwards.
Thank you. I'd like you to go ahead and complete the number of years on the afterwards, because we can't just leave it open.
Oh, I can't leave it open. 10 years. We'll just say 10-year for phase 2.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve this project with the additional amendment to condition 12. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Exton. So go ahead, Commissioner Scott. And
I've actually, my kids play baseball in West Valley Little League, so I've driven by this place all the time. It's going to be the same as what it is. It's just a horse arena for the use. It fits within all of the requirements as laid out within previous plans. It's been used as a horse arena for however many years it's been open, so I don't see any problem with continuing that use, but allowing the owner to expand what his business model is, what their business model would be, and make it more of a benefit for the public.
Commissioner Exton?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same thing as Commissioner Scott. It seems very cohesive with what's already there and kind of what's the future land use is going to say. And I agree, the small sliver that was kind of marked for the Pathways project, I don't imagine it being some massive detriment per se to this project and all of that, so.
Commissioner Birch?
Just a question by way of clarification with the motion. So 5 years to complete the small buildings, and then with the option of an additional 5-year extension to complete the rest, or 10-year to complete the rest?
An additional 5-year to complete the rest. So it's 5 and then additional.
5 and 5.
Yeah, thanks for
Okay.
clarifying. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioner?
I'm good. I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Any other comments that you want to make? I'll call for the question. All those in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Say aye. All those opposed, say aye. Let the minutes reflect that all 4 commissioners voted for this project. Thank you very much. Our next project is 2022-02939 CU. And Ms. Brending is going to tell us about this facility.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Project 2022-02939CU is a conditional use application for a horse boarding facility and riding arena. The property is located at 1966 North G Ranch Lane off of Deer Flat Road and contains 10 acres in the rural residential district. The facility will include 16 stalls boarding 1 horse per stall and a riding arena and pasture area. Each stall will be 432 square feet with 144 square feet covered. The proposal will also include a hay storage structure of 2,160 square feet. 7 trailer parking spaces are provided near the stall area. As for the operations, a maximum of 16 horses will be boarded at one time. The hours of operation are proposed to be from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. Manure is to be removed from stalls daily and removed from the property periodically. The perimeter of the site has already been fully fenced, and as conditioned, no use of sound amplifying devices will be allowed. The applicant expects on average around 10 cars per day. Agency comments that we received on this application include Central District Health, who will require an accessory use application, the county engineer, who will require a grading plan, and CUNA Fire, who will need to approve the fire access roads and the water supply for firefighting. There were no neighborhood comments received, and with that, staff is recommending approval, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the commissioners? And this, Commissioner Birch.
Yes. Was it the applicant that raised the issue of the no sound amplification?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Birch, the applicant did include that in their application, that they would not be using sound amplifying devices.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? And I'm assuming that this is like the one that we just talked about where the approval runs with the property? It's not a 5-year?
Madam Chair, that is correct.
Okay.
This is just a standard conditional use. The approval would run with the land.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and ask the applicant to come forward. And give us your name and address.
My name is Brandon Goodsell, 1966 North G Ranch Lane, Cuna, Idaho.
And do you want to just tell us anything that you want to tell us about the project, or?
Not a lot going on. We had cattle before. We recently sold all of them off, and my grandparents' property to the north of us, they already have a horse boarding stables that I grew up on, and we're just doing the same thing they're doing. So there's not a lot going on there, really.
Thank you very much. What questions do you have for the applicant? Go ahead.
Can you just tell me about the neighborhood meeting? Possibly a little bit?
I had one guy show up to meet us, and he didn't care. His daughter was going to be one of our stall cleaners now. So,
Okay.
other than that, yeah.
So any other questions? So I think you can sit down, and then we'll see if there's anybody else that wants to talk. So is there anybody else that wants to talk about this project? It's now your opportunity to come forward. And so now we'll go back to any more questions that we have for the staff. Any questions for the staff? I don't see any more questions. The applicant, you've got your final chance to say anything you want to tell us, or you can just waive it. Yep, you're good. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and look to the commissioners for a motion to approve, deny, or table this project.
Find it. You got this.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Exton.
based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, I move to approve project. Hold, please. 202202939 CU, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A in the master site plan. No master site plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Commissioner Scott seconded the motion. Go ahead and visit about, or talk about why you are saying to approve this motion.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much similar to our last one that we just saw, very straightforward. Definitely does not seem like there's a lot of neighborhood opposition to it. And, you know, if it's the kind of surrounding characteristics of the area.
Thank you. Any more comments?
I agree. I mean, there's not really a big change here. I think it's just fine. So I don't think anything more needs to be said from me, at least. Yeah.
Mr. Birch? Mr. Colson?
No, I'm good.
I'm going to echo Commissioner Birch's comment that we really appreciate the applicant coming forward with no amplified sound. That makes our job so much easier. So thank you very much for putting that in. Any more comments before we vote? All those in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
And I'll say aye. All those opposed, say nay. So we'll say that this one's approved. We'll move on to the next one. Mr. Moore has 2022-02944, Ada County Development Services. This is the exciting stuff.
It's good to hear. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Brent Moore with Ada County Development Services. Before you is an area of city impact renegotiation with the city of Cuna. The application includes a comprehensive plan map and text amendment to adopt the Cuna future land use map and comprehensive plan as amended November 1st, 2022 for the Cuna area of city impact. Zoning ordinance map amendment to consolidate Cuna ACI A and B into one ACI, and a zoning ordinance text amendment to reference these changes within the Ada County Code. So here is a map of Cuna's existing areas of city impact. The area outlined in white is Cuna's original area of impact, approved in 1998, while the area outlined in yellow is land which was added in 2017. And the area shaded yellow is property which has already been annexed by the city of Cuna. And this is pretty unique to have two areas of impact for one city. It's a unique situation. Cuna ACIA is currently subject to Cuna's 1998 comp plan, which is the last plan adopted by the county for this area, while Cuna ACIB is subject to Ada County's 2016 comp plan. When Cuna requested to expand their area of impact in 2016, the county felt the city's comp plan at that time designated uses that were too intensive for some of the areas located further out from Cuna's city center. So as a compromise, the county agreed to expand the area of impact on the condition it be subject to Ada County's comp plan, which designated less intensive land uses on these properties. So in 2019, CUNA adopted a new comprehensive plan, which it amended last November to include more agriculture, public, and low-density land use designations, similar to the land use map Ada County has adopted for this area. So just as an explanation, on this land use map, the areas in green are designated agriculture, blue is public, so that's a lot of state of Idaho BLM land, and the yellow is low-density residential. And then it's like the orange is more of a medium-density residential. So you can see more of the higher intensity uses are located around the city center and extending to the north and east. Less intensive uses further out. The gray on the very east is an area of CUNA's new urban renewal district. And this just shows how it compares to the Ada County's land use map, which is currently adopted for this area. On Ada County's map on the left, the green again is agriculture, the brown is rangeland, similar to agriculture, and the yellow is low-density residential. So in general, it's kind of similar to the Ada County land use map currently adopted for the area. So with these changes, staff is recommending CUNA's current comprehensive plan be adopted for the CUNA ACI, as it will better serve the area due to the fact it was developed through an extensive public process utilizing more recent conditions and information than the 1998 and 2016 plans currently adopted for the area. So this concludes my presentation, and I will stand for any questions. And just as one note, Ada County is the applicant, so there is no other applicant here to testify.
Okay, thank you. What questions do the commissioners have? I don't have anybody signed up to testify, but if there's somebody in the room that wanted to talk about this, you're welcome to come forward and give us your 3 minutes of comments. And give us your name and address.
Madam Chairman, my name is Betty Berman Solo, and I live at 1970 Cananera Way in Boise. And I'd really like to make my comments as far as item 1 and item 4 at the same time. I'd like to speak on behalf of the Southwest Ada County Alliance. I can do it now, or I can do it later. If you're going to take these separately.
We're going to take these separately. So comments on this project and then comments on a different project.
Okay. As the representative for the Southwest Ada County Alliance, do I have 3 minutes or 15?
3.
3. I'm going to just request that the commissioners read very carefully Mrs. Keith's January 13th letter on behalf of the Southwest Ada County Alliance, and the letter that the previous commissioners wrote to CUNA, suggesting that this was not the time to stretch resources. So on both of these items, I feel that we've seen our infrastructure overburdened so many times in the past. Having been with the Southwest Ada County Alliance for 30 years, we've seen, even with good planning, comprehensive plans go where there has been approval for growth. And we've seen decades. I live in the city of Boise now, and I have seen decades go by without valuable, necessary infrastructure that affects residents' safety. And I know a lot of the commissioners live outside cities, some live inside cities, but you're all representing Ada County. And we're hoping that the county will decide that we need to look at the growth rate and try to put value where density is, and hopefully we won't have growth repeat itself that exists along Lake Hazel and 5 Mile where there's density, there's heavy density, and we don't have the roads, and we will continue to have a lacking in terms of funding from ACHD to get that done. So again, if there's a market out there, what we've seen in the past is that the developers will go to that area, and it will result in there being a stretching of the resources that taxpayers inevitably will have to shoulder. And I've seen that from Overland all the way to our impact area. So thank you for considering that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Questions do we have? Is there anybody else in the room that wanted to speak on this project? And so we'll go back to questions to Mr. Moore. Is the letter that the lady just referred to in this application?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, that was a letter from Marissa Keith. She was referenced from the Southwest Ada County Alliance. That was in reference to Spring Rock, and I can explain that more at that item, but essentially it came in after the deadline for late exhibits, but it has been added to the Spring Rock file and will be included in that report, but that letter was specifically regarding Spring Rock.
Okay, thank you, because I didn't see any public comments on this project.
Yeah, that's correct. We didn't receive any public comments specifically on this application.
Okay, what are the questions the commissioners have? Commissioner Birch?
With regard to the point that was made about stretching the resources, isn't this merely taking the area that CUNA wants to see within their area of impact away from Ada County, so CUNA really has more of a say of what happens within the area that is proximate to the city of CUNA?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Birch, yes, so the area of impact is the area CUNA anticipates eventually annexing at some point in the future. For the other cities, we are utilizing the city's comp plans. Say for the Meridian, Boise, Garden City areas of impact, we've adopted their comp plans. This one was just unique, and that when CUNA came to expand their area of impact, it was a compromise the commission had worked out back in 2017 to let them expand but use Ada County's comp plan. So this was the only city that utilizes Ada County comp plan within their area of impact. So it was a unique one, but we feel like their land use map is similar enough to ours now that it just makes sense to adopt the newer plan.
So, I'm sorry. So I guess the point is, it really doesn't change much, does it, in terms of what can be developed there?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Birch, yes, so the county would still have the final say on unincorporated properties. Just when we're looking at an application, we would see how CUNA's comp plan designates it rather than how Ada County's comp plan designates it long-term. The zoning wouldn't change, so all existing zoning would stay the same. This is just future land use designation from the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, thank you.
What other questions do we have? Okay, we don't have any further questions. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for this project or this application and look to the commissioners for a motion. Approve, deny, or table.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Scott.
Based upon the findings of facts and conclusions of law contained herein, I recommend the commission approves project number 2022-02944-CPA-ZC-ZOA to the board dated today. What's today? Sorry. February 9th, 2022 or 2023.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Colson seconded the motion. Go ahead, Commissioner Scott.
I actually think this gives the people of CUNA more of a say personally, because if it defers to their city, it takes them out of the vague broadness of Ada County, which operates here in Boise, which as the seat of Ada County, it makes sense. But if deferring to Ada County's plans or to CUNA's plans makes a lot of sense, because then the people of CUNA who are directly impacted by this would have more of a voice with their local leadership as well as Ada County working with CUNA to do what's best for those people rather than it just being broadly Ada County's decision. So I think because it doesn't change any of the zoning, it doesn't really change anything as Commissioner Birch determined. I think this actually is better in general for the local community and those that would be trying to make decisions rather than just leaving it kind of open like that, so.
Any other comments? Commissioner Colson?
No, I agree 100%. It gives more people looks on it for the ultimate goal.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I just second everything else, but I also think I kind of look at this in a way of almost like a cleanup, you know, because like the staff said, it was a very unique situation, having the two different areas of impact with different codes, all of that, you know, and we pretty much have the same agreement, so to speak, with every other city in the county, or almost every other city county if I'm wrong. So I think it makes sense for us to also offer that to CUNA as well.
Any other comments? I would just comment that I am a CUNA person, and I've been in CUNA a long time, and I'm glad to see CUNA having some professionals that can put together some of these kinds of things on a more long-term basis. So I view this as a positive. So go ahead and vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Let the minutes reflect that all 4 people voted for the motion. Thank you. We're up for 2022-02984, CPA, Ada County Development Services, and Mr. Letson is going to provide us with this project, or applicant.
All right, thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. So the item before you is a comprehensive plan amendment. The applicant is Ada County again, so you won't have a follow-up application or applicant presentation after mine. What we're asking you to do is amend the Ada County Comprehensive Plan to adopt by reference the capital improvement plans, or CIPs, for the Ada County Sheriff, Jail, Coroner, and Paramedics. In quotes, this is growth paying for growth. So if you're familiar with impact fees, I'll read directly from our website. An impact fee is a one-time fee that is imposed by a local government on a new or proposed development project to pay for all or a portion of the cost of providing public services to the new development. So public services in the form of the sheriff, the jail, the coroner, and the paramedics are the subject of the capital improvement plans that are before you for adoption. Some rules about impact fees: they have to be expended within 10 years of being collected and may only fund facilities, apparatus, and equipment to continue the current levels of service as growth occurs. So there's a lot of background math that goes into figuring out what we need from a service level standpoint in terms of new facilities, apparatus, et cetera. And then we kind of base that on what we're expecting growth-wise and figure out what our funding needs are going to be. And that essentially generates the fee schedule on the right here for impact fees. So this is kind of walk you through that. We have 2 fees for the sheriff because essentially we're only charging for sheriff in unincorporated Ada County. The cities pretty much have their own police force other than the city of Eagle. They do rely on the Ada County Sheriff, but they have a separate agreement there that kind of works through that situation. And then everyone, both within the city and Ada County, unincorporated county, would pay fees for the jail, paramedics, and the coroner. And again, we've broken out that fee schedule based on a cost per residential unit or a cost per square foot based on a commercial project. Down at the bottom is a rough total of what someone could expect for a new residence in unincorporated county. It's going to be $1,650. Inside city limits, it's going to be $984. So there are a lot of jurisdictions and agencies that collect their own impact fees right now. Ada County Highway District is an example. They collect impact fees to fund roadway improvements, different things like that. Each city, mainly, some of them are still figuring out how to collect impact fees, have their own impact fees for police, fire, parks, and so forth. So this is Ada County's turn to try to put this tool in its toolbox, basically, as a way to, again, try to help growth pay for growth as we continue to see more people come to the area and the need for more housing and commercial uses. We also have a development impact fee advisory committee, and so the role of that committee is to review these fees and our associated CIPs to make sure that they're up to date and that we're collecting the right amount. They also process any waivers or modifications at the project level, or at least make a recommendation to the board to process those. In terms of next steps, and I can walk through the CIPs if you really want to drill down into the details. I have kind of a link to each of those, but it was included in your packet. And again, kind of explains how we got to what we think we need to pay for and how we came up with the fee, again, shown on the right. So in terms of next steps, in the event that you recommend approval of this, we'll go to the board. We hope the board adopts this as well. And they would also establish an ordinance to allow us to collect those fees. That's not something subject to the Planning and Zoning Commission's approval, but it is something that we will see with the board at the next phase. So that would essentially get the unincorporated properties taken care of. We have also been in very lengthy discussions with our city partners to have them adopt our CIPs into their comp plans as well, and to establish their own ordinances to collect those fees for us. The county kind of has the tough haul of getting everyone to row in the same direction in the same boat for the impact fees, whereas cities kind of get to say, this is our city limits and we're going to collect this fee and we don't really have to figure it out with anybody else. Ada County, again, has kind of a little bit tougher of a fight, which is why this project has taken a while to get to this point. We have really good working relationships with a lot of the cities right now. We are still answering some questions with Boise and Meridian. And I'm in a lot of meetings with mayors and council members to talk about how this can all work. But that would be the next step. So then we would have fees collected both within city limits as well as within unincorporated areas to, again, fund the sheriff, jail, coroner, and paramedics. So with that, staff is recommending that you approve the project and I guess recommend approval to the board for 2022-02984 CPA. And I'll stand for any questions.
What questions do you have? Commissioner Birch?
So with respect to the amount that would be paid for the fees, I presume those are cumulative. You've got amount for the jail, you got amount for the coroner. And so how do they compare? Like, for example, I'm just trying to think of the next project that the next application we're going to be considering here tonight. How would, if that project was going to be paying those fees, how would that compare to what they would have paid if this wouldn't have been adopted?
Yeah, well, it's a pretty easy calculation that we can run. 1650 times the number of units in that project is what they could pay. Now, granted, this fee schedule can be updated, and we are required to review our CIPs at a minimum of every 5 years to make sure we're collecting the appropriate fee. Recently, a lot of jurisdictions have been increasing their impact fees because the cost of services has gone up and the need for facilities has increased. So again, snapshot in time, if they were somehow able to get all of their units online in the next 5 years, it'd be 1650 times the number of residential units within that development. And then there are, again, that's a very simplistic way to talk about impact fees. You're going to hear in the application some options that they have worked out with other districts that charge impact fees to essentially pay all fees up front and not be charged again when the unit comes online. Those are things that can be worked out with impact fees. And again, I'll rely on Brent to kind of talk you through that, and probably the applicant who's been in a lot of discussions with the service providers in the area. But yeah, that's pretty much how we would make that calculation.
So basically, Ada County is kind of late coming to this, correct? Where they have not been collecting fees that need to be collected to pay for those services.
Yes, that's a very honest way to talk about it. We wish we'd figured out how to collect impact fees probably 20 years ago. I think our service levels and some of the expenses to taxpayers and other things like that would have been different if we had this tool in the toolbox a little bit earlier. And it's kind of an emerging tool that a lot of communities around Idaho and western cities are making use of because, again, we've historically underfunded services for different things, and this is a better way than all of a sudden increasing a tax levy rate or a bond or something along those lines. It's an alternative solution to some of those funding issues.
Any more questions? I look at that list and I say, why is there not a park fee for Ada County?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. That was a discussion we had early on. We engaged the parks group a lot around that issue. Parks in Ada County are It's a difficult funding process. We're not quite as robust as Boise. The simple answer is, well, the easy answer for me is I wasn't there as a part of that conversation up front, but that's not an excuse for me not knowing the answer. The second one is it's a lot more complicated, and we really need to kind of figure out what the service level is and what we're going to be doing from a parks facility standpoint. This is a bit of an aside, but planning is actually engaged in a master planning effort with Parks and Waterways to do a look across the county as what do we need for park spaces, what do we need for trailheads, paths. So I think after we get that master planning effort completed, it would probably be a great time to consider an impact fee for parks in Ada County. But it just kind of everyone came to the realization that we weren't quite ready to figure out what that fee needed to be, and we didn't want to hold everything else up while we tried to figure that out. So,
Thank you. Any other more questions?
I got one.
Okay.
On these impact fees, would this be collected from the developer, or would this be collected from the builder as he goes into, after he purchased the lot and starts getting his building permit? How do you guys?
yeah, we collected at the time of a permit being issued or picked up. So whoever's
Building
on
permit
whoever's on
issued.
the hook for that permit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the simple answer.
Yeah,
So.
all right.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to look to the room. If there's anybody that wants to come talk about this proposal, you're welcome to come forward now and give us your comments. 3 minutes of comments. There we go, one person.
My name is Gary Briggs. I live at 9000 West Cuna Road, and I didn't come here to talk about this, but $1,650, I don't think that's anywhere near what we should be, impact fees should be to cover all the roads and schools and all the other stuff that we're getting so far behind on in Ada County. The traffic jams, and they're putting all these houses in on 2-lane roads and then expecting people to get to and from work, conveniently. I know Ada County or the city of Boise recently has heard about where they're not going to let new fast food restaurants have drive-throughs because they're concerned about the cars idling in the drive-through. And on a lot of these roads out south of Boise, you've got thousands of cars just putting along, idling. We need to make sure what the needs that this is going to create for the valley, they pay for it up front. I just think that's ridiculously low impact fee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Any other comments from the crowd? Give us your name and address.
Betty Berman Solo. I live at 1970 Cananero Way. If staff knows roughly how long it's going to take to work through the impact fee that would apply to parks, I would encourage, as the gentleman just stated, impact fees have been around for parks a long, long time. And because we're getting into an area where growth is occurring everywhere in Ada County, if that could be added to the process where you have an impact fee for parks, again, it's passed on to the person that buys the lot, and I just read where the city of Boise is the 10th fastest growing city now. It's recorded there, and it's not just Boise, it's certainly the entire Ada County. Whatever kind of additional fees that can be tacked on to people coming in for new building, I think it's certainly reasonable. This is not a one idea location for impact fees. So if staff knows how long it would take, maybe to pull it into this process now rather than, months later. When building starts happening, I don't know how quickly that can be turned around, but I would certainly feel residents would support the development pay its fair share, and this certainly seems fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else? So we're going to go back to questions. And I wondered if you could talk about that this is just a component of the total fees for people that are in cities.
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioners. So to address the first gentleman's comments, the discussion about roadways, that is a highway district impact fee. Those are already being collected across the county. I think they have just revised their impact fee schedule recently. The trend has been a lot of jurisdictions increasing fees. We're trying to get ours established now, and then we'll increase them. But these don't concern roadways. They don't concern schools. They are specific to the sheriff, the jail, the paramedics, and the coroner, because those are services Ada County provides. We can't collect impact fees for services we don't provide. That's up to the highway district or the city for parks or things like that. To address Mrs. Berman-Solo's comments about parks, I think we are going to be looking into that. I think that's a very real thing that could happen. It was something that we talked about at the beginning of this project. Unfortunately, we don't have a CIP developed for parks right now. And a big reason is we don't have a master plan that's up to date for parks. So we need that first to then figure out what facilities are needed. So then we can start figuring out what the cost of that is, which then translates into this fee schedule over here. So I do see it as something we look at and probably take on as soon as we can. I will say we've been working on this since 2020. Sorry, I almost said 2000. That would be really embarrassing. 2020. And it's been a haul. And, COVID didn't help us out. Elections didn't help us out. There's just been a lot of, hey, I think I've had this conversation with you 3 times already, but let's have it one more time about what we're trying to do with impact fees. So it's not a fast-moving thing, unfortunately, but it is something that we want to do for parks. I think our parks director is very interested in that, and I do see it happening, but certainly don't want to pause on all of these now to try to get that done, just given the reality of the timeline it takes. So, and I did want to also enter into the record an additional exhibit that wasn't provided to you, but was kind of an important initial step in this process. It was the initial feasibility analysis report, where we looked at all of these things. Parks is actually included in here, so it's some interesting reading. This information is built into the CIP, so you do technically have it in front of you, but this was kind of the, let's look at this and figure out what's possible. And I just think it's a good document to have in the record. We'll certainly talk about it with the board at the next step. But again, it was accounted for in the CIPs, but I thought it would be one more exhibit to include in the record, so.
Thank you very much.
And that's
Any
all
more
I got.
questions? Mr. Exton?
Madam Chair. Yes, so 2 questions. One, you mentioned that the county is required to update the CIPs every 5 years, correct? But that doesn't stop you from, let's say, 3 months from now, if you magically have the park stuff figured out that fast,
Right.
from going back in and updating it, assuming this all works through the way it needs to, correct?
Yeah, Chairman Commissioner Exton, that's right. We could go back and visit this in 3 months. I think that'd be pretty silly. We'd look pretty, like, hey guys, sorry, we're only joking. It's going to be this fee now. But you can do it, within a year, within 2 years, when it makes sense. I can tell you a lot of work went into the CIP, so we feel pretty confident about these numbers right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a minimum of every 5 years we have to go and take a look and figure out if an update's needed.
Perfect. And then the other question I have with apartment buildings, I know we've been improving some smaller scale apartment kind of complexes within the county. How does that work out in relation to this? Would it be per apartment unit or per just like physical structure?
It's per dwelling unit. I believe that's how we're accounting for it here. We don't differentiate like other jurisdictions between a single family home and an apartment unit. So it is considered a residential unit, and so per our fee schedule, we'd be charging per the unit within the building, not necessarily the commercial square footage of the building.
Okay.
So, but yeah, there is an opportunity to collect these for the multifamily stuff that you are reviewing on occasion.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and look for a motion from one of the commissioners. Commissioner Birch.
Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained in the staff report, the commission recommends approval of project number 2022-02984 CPA to the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Been seconded by Commissioner Exton. Commissioner Birch?
I think it makes perfect sense. It seems like this is long overdue. And so, I'm pleased to see the county doing it.
Thank you. Commissioner Exton?
Exact same as Commissioner Birch.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I agree with Commissioner Birch that I appreciate the staff coming forward with trying to not necessarily make the perfect product, but moving us forward. And this is a long time coming, and you don't want to have no plan, no fees when you're trying to wait for the perfect plan with the perfect fees. So at least we're taking some step. I appreciate the comments coming from the audience because we all are concerned about the parks and things like that, but at least this is a step in the right direction going forward rather than holding it back for parks and other things as well, so.
Thank you. Mr. Colson?
I really appreciate you guys going in and analyzing it as well as you guys did, because you could, of course, ask for quite a bit more, but I'm glad to see that, especially where the housing market's going and stuff like that, adding those fees and stuff extra on there. I get your guys' side for sure, and I think it's time, but I appreciate you guys going in and analyzing it so well to coming up with that fair number, in my opinion.
Thank you. Any more questions? So look to the commissioners for a motion to, we'll close the public hearing, and then I'll look to the commissioners for a motion to approve.
He already motioned.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'll call for the motion. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, and we'll call it good. I'm going to take just a 5-minute recess, and we'll be back at, 7:26. PC, CPA, Spring Rock Development. Before we get into the project, I'll disclose that I live in CUNA, so I'm going to know some of the people that are involved in this, but it's not going to impact my decision tonight. And I happened to be at the CUNA City Council meeting Tuesday night this week where this project was mentioned, but that's not going to impact my decision tonight. I just wanted to disclose that I had other information before I came here. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Brent.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Brent Moore with Ada County Development Services. Before you is a planned community comprehensive plan amendment for the Spring Rock planned community. The planned community application process requires 2 steps. The first being a comprehensive plan amendment to designate the property as planned community on a future land use map and adopt a comprehensive plan for the site. The second step, the implementation plan, would adopt a zoning map and ordinance for the property and include more detailed information regarding financing, phasing, and design. The intent of requiring 2 steps is to first determine the overall compatibility of the site and proposed plan prior to developing the zoning ordinance and specific design details. So this diagram just shows the general application steps for each process. So highlighted in yellow, we're at the Planning and Zoning Commission for step 1. After your recommendation, it will go to the board, and if approved, they would start the process over again for the implementation plan. So it would come before you again a second time if approved. Prior to the application being submitted, scoping sessions were held with the affected service providers and transportation agencies to receive their input on the project. 2 public involvement sessions were also held, in which all property owners within a mile of the site were invited to attend. Reports and analyses were also required in the specific areas listed on the screen, detailing how each would be impacted or addressed by the development. And here's a vicinity map just showing the general location of the property, generally located between Cloverdale Road and Cole Road along the south side of 10 Mile Creek Road. Here's a closer look at the property. Just some things to note. 10 Mile Creek does run northwest across the property towards the New York Canal. It is an ephemeral stream, generally just contains water during periods of snowmelt or heavy rain. Then New York Canal, as mentioned, does abut the property to the northwest. There's also a bench slope here, just to note, across the southern part of the property, which will largely remain undeveloped. And then there's the Falcon Crest Golf Course, as you can see, abuts the site directly to the west. And there's also a master plan community, as you can see, being developed on that property. The Valor Master Plan Community was the Falcon Crest Master Plan Community. Is currently under construction, and that would include over 2,300 homes when it's complete. And just for reference, here's the site plan for that community, which would abut this property directly to the west. And they would be connected by a new collector roadway here north of CUNA Road. And here's an image just highlighting some other similar proposed planned communities in the area and employment centers. Just again, the Valor Master Plan Community, which touches the property. Murillo Farms is currently under review with the city of Boise. It would include over 3,400 homes. And then there's the Locale Plan Community currently under construction in Boise, approximately 2,000 homes. And then just showing some of the employment areas that are kind of growing out in this part of the county. Just the airport, Gowan Field, Boise's Urban Renewal District, Micron, Idaho Correction Facility just announced they'll be adding 1,100 beds to their campus there. And then the CUNA Urban Renewal District just to the south, where the Meta Warehouse was recently approved. And here's an overview of other recent planned community applications in and around Ada County. The circles just show the general location and relative size, with the number in parentheses being the approximate number of housing units proposed. As you'll see, there are other similarly sized planned communities in the vicinity of Spring Rock, with larger ones being proposed around the edges of the county. As noted in the population analysis, Compass anticipates over 100,000 additional homes being built within Ada County by the year 2050, based on their current population projections. So here's the proposed land use map. The community will ultimately include approximately 2,775 homes and 362,000 square feet of office and commercial space at full build-out, which is anticipated for around the year 2040. The comprehensive plan calls for a variety of housing types and sizes available to own and rent, and encourages affordable housing and accessory dwelling units in order to accommodate a wide range of needs. Plan also encourages home offices, home occupations, and envisions the commercial areas ultimately being able to provide the primary daily needs of residents. 2 elementary schools are proposed on land to be dedicated to the CUNA and West Ada school districts. Those are the areas shaded purple here. Each site would be 10 acres in size. And amenities would include a community center, a 30-acre park, a pond, dog park, and various small neighborhood parks and playgrounds. The community will be connected by a multi-use pathway, which will extend the length of the site along the channel of 10 Mile Creek. You can see that here, just this green line running across the site towards the New York Canal. Pathways will also be provided along the New York Canal, within the bench slopes and other areas throughout the community to reduce the need for vehicle travel interior to the site. And as noted earlier, 10 Mile Creek crosses the site. However, due to past water diversions and historic grazing of the site, the natural channel and riparian vegetation of the creek has been lost. So as a means of protecting and enhancing this channel, Spring Rock has received approval from FEMA to reconstruct the channel in a manner that would narrow the floodplain and better handle flooding events, and also create a recreational amenity for future residents. The sewer would be provided by an on-site wastewater treatment facility. Potable water will be provided by Veolia from existing off-site wells, and irrigation water will be provided from on-site wells, as well as treated water from the wastewater treatment facility. And Spring Rock is also looking at the feasibility of potentially injecting excess water from the wastewater treatment facility into the aquifer when not needed for irrigation. And then regarding roadway improvements, 5 Mile Road would be extended all the way south through the property. And as mentioned, there'd be a new collector roadway which would tie it to the Valor Master Plan community to the west. There would be a new roundabout at the intersection of 5 Mile Road and 10 Mile Creek Road, as well as another collector roadway here connecting 10 Mile to 5 Mile, and the extension of Maple Grove Road from 10 Mile Creek Road to the south end of the property. So ACHD has approved the proposed.
Can you show the extension of the Maple Grove Road, please?
Ace will do the questions after.
You know what, we're going to wait on those questions. Let him finish his presentation, and then we'll go through those questions.
All right. And ACHD has approved the proposed internal roadway improvements and also approved the traffic impact study submitted by Spring Rock, which provides an analysis of improvements to surrounding roadways and intersections which would be needed to mitigate the impacts of the development. This image just shows the roadway segments and intersections which Spring Rock analyzed as part of their traffic impact study. As the development is not anticipated to be complete until around the year 2040, ACHD will require an updated traffic impact study be submitted with each preliminary plat to determine which specific roadway improvements would be required to mitigate each phase. And so no improvements are required at this time, as this application is only for a comprehensive plan and no preliminary plat is included. So that could potentially be included as part of the second phase, but for now it's just the adoption of a comprehensive plan essentially. Some concern and comments have been expressed regarding a portion of the site being designated as prime farmland. So this map on the left shows that the dark green areas are prime farmland designated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Lighter green are state designated lands. So you'll see there is some prime farmland showing along 10 Mile Creek as it goes through the property. However, This portion of the property is not being farmed and has instead been used primarily for grazing for the past nearly 100 years. The application notes that the long, narrow nature of the area designated as prime farmland and the channel for 10 Mile Creek, which bisects the property, would make profitable, large-scale farming of the site difficult. So this image just shows kind of the channel cutting through the property, which could make farming difficult for the portion that is in designated prime farmland. Regarding emergency services, fire protection will be provided by the Kuna Fire District. The applicant has reached a preliminary funding agreement with the district in which the applicant would prepay all fire impact fees for the development up front in order to construct a new fire station on property the district owns near the site on Cloverdale Road. As that's on the very bottom left of the screen, you'll see the property the fire district owns. And additional contributions would also be made following approval of the first final plat to cover operational costs until a sufficient tax base has been established. Similar agreements are proposed for the Ada County Sheriff and paramedics, which would include shared space at the site of the new fire station. These agreements would need to be finalized as part of the second phase of the application. So as detailed in the findings of fact, the proposed comprehensive plan and associated materials have been found to meet the required findings of the Ada County Code. And as such, staff is recommending approval of the application. This concludes my presentation, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. What questions do the commissioners have?
Madam Chair?
Scott?
I just have a question. Is there, in your discussions with ACHD, any plan to extend Cole and Maple Grove so they connect? Or is it all going to be reliant on 5 Mile for this? Is 5 Mile going to be the main artery into this? 5 Mile in Pleasant Valley, it looks like.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Scott, this shows kind of the roadway segments and intersections which were going to be primarily impacted by the development. So it does, ACHD's report does mention a lot of the traffic, coming along 5 Mile and along Pleasant Valley,
Yeah.
10 Mile Creek Road.
Cloverdale, sorry, not 5 Mile.
I'm sorry, Cloverdale, Pleasant Valley Road, 10 Mile Creek Road. So these are all potential segments and intersections which could need improvements to be mitigated, but there hasn't been discussion of Cole Road being extended as part of this. They will improve the portion of Cole Road which abuts the property, which is not much. The applicant may have more information on this, but these are kind of the areas that were seen to be most impacted.
Any additional questions?
No.
Commissioner Birch? No.
Yeah, I had similar questions about how one would get in and out. So Cole Road is the only road currently that would go clear down to Cunamora, correct?
Let me.
No, Cole terminates like right after Lake Hazel, so it would be.
Terminates going south, but then after you get down to 10 Mile Creek Road, there is a road right in the middle, and I thought it was Cole.
It is, that's Cole, yeah.
That then
but they don't
goes on
connect.
over to Cunamora.
Cole doesn't go, but Cole doesn't go anywhere towards Boise.
Right, yeah, you're going south, you're not going north. And then so your ways out of the project are not going to be going north, correct? They're going to be going east, west, or south to Cunamora. Because 10 Mile Creek Road, I mean, it is a windy, narrow road with some drop-offs on the side when you're coming from Pleasant Valley, heading over to where Cole Road is, where this development's gonna stop. What's planned for 10 Mile Creek Road?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Birch, 10 Mile Creek Road will be improved as part of this project. They would widen portions of the roadway. And then when they submit their first preliminary plat, ACHD would look at what mitigation efforts would be necessary. And so that could be part of, once they submit a plat, we'd know for sure which improvements they would be required to make, but it could be improvements to 10 Mile Creek Road. Those improvements are envisioned eventually, but ACHD said it will depend exactly how many units are proposed with the plat. At that time, they'll look at which surrounding roadways would need to be improved and then the applicant would be responsible for those. But yeah, eventually 10 Mile Creek is envisioned to be improved as part of this.
So even though 10 Mile Creek Road, the part of it that is not in the proposed subdivision from Cole to Pleasant Valley might also be a requirement of ACHD that it be improved in order to get traffic out going to the east.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Birch, that's correct. Potentially, ACHD can require improvements that are off-site if they feel the impact would require some mitigation.
Thank you.
What are the questions, Commissioner Scott?
Madam Chair, I saw that you spoke on elementary schools. Is there any plan for any high schools or middle schools? Because if my memory serves me, the nearest one would be Cuna High, Bora, and Mountain View, which are all really far from this. So I'm just wondering if there's any input on schools outside of that's high schools. I think Lake Hazel and Cuna or whatever have middle schools too. So any input on that potentially?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Scott, yeah, currently the plans would just be for elementary schools on site. They have spoken with the school districts, and that would be their primary focus. But you are correct in that the nearest middle school and high school are a little ways away. So at this time, those students would need to be bused unless something was built sooner, closer.
What other questions do we have?
Oh, sorry, I just want more. What does
Scott?
neighborhood commercial mean? Just for my own education, what does that mean? Is it like convenience stores or? Okay.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Scott, intended to be, kind of retail type uses that, say, residents could walk to, easily accessible by the nearby residents. Applicant could explain a little, maybe some more specifics, but yeah, just intended to be commercial areas that serve the kind of general neighborhood surrounding area, not like regional commercial, but more neighborhood commercial.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Colson, any questions? I just want to clarify that when you talk about the ACHD requiring off-site improvements to the other intersections, is that in addition to the impact fees, or is that instead of the impact fees?
Madam Chair, applicant may be able to answer that a little better on if the impact, because normally they would be charged impact fees, but I'm not sure if ACHD has that agreement to require off-site impacts in lieu of impact fees. Applicant may be able to answer.
That's a negotiated item?
I would maybe defer to the applicant.
Okay, and then I thought I read somewhere in there that there's a normal requirement for open space, and we're modifying the requirement for open space?
Madam Chair, that would be part of the implementation plan. So as part of the second phase of the application, there are service level standards, specific service level standards, and yes, some of those do get into developed acreage of developed open space, natural open space. So they'd mentioned they may plan to request an exception in the implementation phase, I believe, to the natural open space is because they'll be doing extra developed open space. Because our other planned communities have kind of been up in the foothills where it's been easy to donate open space, but here it's, there's kind of less of that unusable land. So, but that would be as part of the second phase of the application, the implementation plans where they would specifically request that. So it wouldn't be requested at this stage.
So next question is, would it be appropriate for us to ask some questions or make some comments about that, even though it isn't part of our,
Madam Chair, you could.
it's here for tonight?
Madam Chair, you could definitely ask questions about the open space plans, but just, that specific standard wouldn't have to be met till the second phase, but you can ask questions about it tonight.
Okay, thank you. What other questions do we have? Okay, I think we'd like the applicant to come forward, and I think you've got 15 minutes. Is that to provide your comments? And then just to let everybody in the room know, the applicant goes first, and they give us their comments, and then we open the public hearing for people who have signed up. I've got 4 people signed up. Then we'll let other people in the room talk, each for 3 minutes apiece. And then we'll go back and ask more questions of staff, and then we'll come back and let the applicant provide a short rebuttal. So that's kind of how the process goes. So thank you very much for being here tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you, Commissioners. They're loading up my PowerPoint presentation, so I'll just give my name and address for the record for introductions. Dave Jorgensen. The address is 14254 West Battenberg Drive in Boise. and really pleased to be with you tonight. We've spent a lot of time to get to this point, and I'm very thrilled to answer all the questions you have. We absolutely really appreciate the questions so far. So with that, I'm going to try to click and run at the same time here. So I will do a quick introduction of our team. I've been in the land development business for over 25 years here locally, and a second-generation land developer. A couple of my teammates or my partners, Chris Finley and Pat Dunslogger, are both partners here and long-term professionals in the real estate community, and appreciate their inputs. Also, we have Jeff Bowers from Givens Pursley, as well as Anna Canning, who's not here but listening, and she is our planner, and she's been excellent as well. So I'm going to go through a quick overview of the site, the application details, and the staff report. And let me run this right. Here we go. So as mentioned by staff, and if I see some things, I'm going to quick through kind of fast, so I don't want to over duplicate things, but I will pause and answer any questions you might have as well. So the site is approximately 762 acres in size. We are south of Boise, east of Kuna, as mentioned. We're adjacent to the Falcon Crest Golf Course, adjacent to the recently approved Valor subdivision. That's a planned community within Kuna. And we have close proximity to urban centers, employment centers and work areas, both the Meta project, as we know, which is close by, as well as by the Micron is maybe 15 minutes away. The Boise Airport is also less than 15 minutes away. So we recognize our proximity. What's also unique is we are not within any city area of impact, which allows us to be a planned community, which is kind of a unique part of the process. I want to highlight some topography things just for clarity. Happy to answer your questions. Was referenced. The red areas, as you see on the plan, are the steep slopes. There's a high-pressure gas line with Williams Gas Line that runs diagonally through the site. That's the orange lines you see on the plan. There's some gray lines run horizontally across. Those are Idaho Power transmission lines. And also the floodplain has been discussed that runs through the middle of the site, all of which are being considered in this factors of this design for this application. Staff really went through and did a great job articulating the process. It really is a long two-step process. First is the comprehensive plan, map, and text amendment, which is what we have in front of you tonight. That's all we're talking about is the comprehensive plan, map, and text. There are a lot of details of which I can share a lot of answers to you now, and depending upon the outcomes here, we'll have another bite at the apple, if you will. We'll have a preliminary plat. ACHD will have strong conditions of approval based on the already approved traffic impact study, all through the implementation phase. We'll have multiple preliminary plats, and each of those will have conditions of approval based on the traffic impact studies for the site. So as was mentioned by staff, there are several studies that have been performed for this development. I won't list them all just for sake of time, but each one of these reports provides requirements and analysis as this planned community moves forward. And that's kind of the crux of the whole thing. It provides goals and policies, and then an implementations, strategies, if you will, for each of these areas, which is what's then called the planned community sub-area plan. And so what does the sub-area plan look like? Here we go. So the first chapter, there's 5 chapters. The first chapter touches on natural features, demographics, existing infrastructure, and proposed land uses. Then we have goals, policies, and implementation strategies for each one of them in the plan. What comes out of it, the high-level results are a mix of residential and commercial and recreational uses as required by this application, by the plan. A variety of housing types, not just one. We'll have townhomes, we'll have single-family attached and detached homes for sale, for rent product, which is really critical because we know there's a significant need in this community for a variety of housing type, and this will help meet that need. But it all is tied together with a central urban plan or urban village, a community center in the middle. I'll just kind of touch on that. So here's you look on the location of the site. The center part of it is the urban center. There'll be a community center where people can come together and gather. There's going to be a large park, a 30-acre plus regional park will be built by us. There's a large pathway trail running through the middle of it. We'll have, which is over 2 miles long. As mentioned, we'll have through our reconstruction of the 10 Mile Creek, we'll have a nice waterway along the pathway. So it'll be a nice amenity through the community. It all gets kind of tied together with a big vision in mind. Again, we're adjacent to Falcon Crest Golf Course, as you can see there. Also interesting is they will be providing 5 Mile from Kuna Road to our south border, and then we'll be tying into the 5 Mile Road and running it north to the 10 Mile Creek or Hubbard Road. So it's a connection of the roads as planned for by ACHD. Phase 2, or Chapter 2 is the community connections. It's not just about internal, but it's the external connections within the community for the roads, the pedestrian, bike pathways, utilities and services, and so forth. Again, goals, policies, and implementation strategies for each. Chapter 3 is about coordinated growth. So we work with utilities, the gas company, the power company, schools, or 2 school districts. We've met with both of them, had good discussions with both school districts, the Ada County Highway District, Ada County Development Services, emergency services of both police, fire, and Ada County paramedics. And with all that, again, there are goals, policies, and implementation strategies to meet each one of their needs. Bottom line is we will be tied to and obligated to ensure that growth pays for growth. Growth pays for itself. You just heard a presentation, the application before, and I didn't want to confuse it, but 2 of us on this committee, as team here, are actually serving on your Development Impact Fee Advisory Committee. We support impact fees. We absolutely support it. In fact, I also serve on Boise City's Impact Fee Advisory Committee, have for almost 10 years. Very familiar with the process and the need to have impact fees to make sure growth pays for growth and support that process. There will be substantial on-site and off-site improvements, and I'll happy to answer those questions as were raised previously. Chapter 4 is about sustainable practices and resiliency. So we have affordable housing. We want to not just think about today's developments of the 21st century, but also think about the 22nd century, 40, 50, 80 years from now. We know that after COVID, a lot of people like to work from home, more so than before. We have to have broadband services to take care of that, or at least address some of those needs. Trip captures consideration, electric vehicle charging stations, solar panels, sewage treatment. As mentioned, we'll have an on-site sewage treatment facility that'll be, our plan is a Class A facility, of which the facility plan's already been approved by DEQ. So we'll go through that entire process to make sure we're doing it in the right way. Pressurized irrigation, water reuse, conservation, again, goals, policies, implementation strategies will come forward in the next phase as well. And then Chapter 5 is to make sure we comply with state codes. So as was mentioned by staff, and I won't go through all these, but I'll just highlight a couple. The Ada County Code requires we meet every one of these standards to make sure that we comply to the comprehensive plan changes and for Planned Community. For example, under transportation, we've already submitted a traffic impact study to ACHD. It's been adopted by ACHD, approved by ACHD. And then as we roll forward with the preliminary plats, we will have specific site-specific and off-site road improvements as required for this development per that traffic impact study. As mentioned, water, I'll pick that one for example. We are in Veolia, formerly known as Suez. We're in Veolia Water's certificated area with Department of Water Resources. It's already been planned to be served by them. We'll have 2 points of connections north of us, one about a mile, the other one about to the north, the other one to the northeast, about almost 2 miles to the northeast of us. And we'll then be tying into their network of multiple wells that are already existing. So no new wells will be drilled for this site. It's already been planned for to serve this area. The irrigation water has already been used, as I mentioned, and we have 2 on-site wells for the site. And we'll just use those for our common areas. So there'll be some efficiencies there with Veolia versus our water, for our surface water. Let me touch on law enforcement, fire protection, and paramedics. I think that's really important to know. We understand that some of the needs in this area are today, and CUNA Fire is one of them. CUNA only has 1 fire station. They need maybe 3, actually, the way they've been growing. It's hard to grow from 1 to 2, let alone 1 to 3. And so we've reached out to them, and we've struck a way to really make that happen. And so they've even asked us if we would be willing to help them build it because they think maybe we can do it at a cheaper way than they can. And again, an offset of impact fees, but that's just the first part. Then they need to have firefighters, and we've agreed to help pay for some firefighters until we have a tax base that will help sustain that going forward. Likewise, law enforcement with Ada County Sheriff and paramedics or Ada County paramedics, we'll have a similar structure with them. Probably a shared facility, actually. That's what we're discussing with all 3 agencies, is to have a shared facility, very similar to what they do in Eagle, with the fire and with the sheriff over there. Lastly, as we mentioned, open space, we will be. We recognize it's a later time, but our plan is not to be short on open space, but rather have more improved open space. So this is a little bit of a unique site where we're trying to cluster the units and have more developed open space, and that is our plan, is not to just be short, but rather have more developed open space, which would be more usable for the residents. Developed open space, multifamily housing, schools, mix of uses. So let me just jump to that one here. employment, walkability, trip capture. These are all things which we will be exceeding the standards as well within the Ada County's codes. So you asked about process. We had neighbor meetings. We also had 2 scoping meetings. One was specific for traffic, and the other was for all other agencies. Then we had follow-up meetings with a lot of them as well, just to seek to understand their needs and incorporate them into our plan. With these meetings, we had lots of discussion of support, neutral and opposition. A lot of the comments of support range from, we appreciate the vision, the mix of housing and commercial that you're providing, the variety of homes, the amenities that we provided, and the fact that growth will be paying for itself with this development. Questions and concerns, we recognize those too. Sewer, traffic, water, schools were the 4 primary areas of concern. I think I've addressed those already in my presentation, but happy to answer your questions. Again, we'll be donating a couple of school sites. We work with the schools. They tell us what they need. We don't tell the schools what to do. And they've dictated what their plans are for the area, and then we're helping meet those plans. And again, there's letters from all these agencies with regard to our application. We recognize the City of Boise did submit a letter, call it a letter of opposition. They stated a list of concerns. I guess I would say a couple things to that. One is their comments were maybe misunderstanding a little bit of the facts. ACHD has reviewed the scope of this project. Staff identified, I think there's over 17 intersections and multiple lanes of traffic, all of which have been studied and will continue to be studied with this application. This is, again, the very early part of the process. This is not prime farmland, has been identified by staff. We recognize the off-site improvements we'll be doing and the on-site for the sewer as well. So staff, we appreciate your recognition there. What was interesting to me, in addition to that, was the City of Kuna actually submitted a letter of support for this application. They acknowledge that this does fit adjacent to the application. It complements the recently approved developments in the area, both in the county as well as in the City of Kuna. But we are, again, outside the area of impact of Kuna, and this is better served as a planned community. We look at, and as we work with all of our agencies as partners, I just want to make that hopefully clear to everybody. We're really taking a different approach here. It's not just come forward and just steamroll and here we are and good luck, neighbors. We're from here. We believe in supporting our community and being proud of what we're done with when we're all finished. And so with that in mind, we listen to the agencies and try to meet their needs as we go along. Last couple comments. In the findings of your report, there are 15 findings listed. I believe it's on page 17 of the findings sheet. Staff can clarify that sheet there. Every one have been met. They address future housing, economic needs, educational needs, environment, recreation, mix of land uses, and so forth, including adequate public facilities, urban public services. It'll be done in a phased approach. Obviously, development can't put all the things in at once before you start having a little bit of revenue from the homes. And likewise, it's not right for us to have all the homes and the commercial first, and then the improvements follow later. It will be done through a phased approach. Oops, I just clicked the wrong slide. There we go. So in conclusion, I would just like to thank staff. We've worked very closely with them, gathered input, their comments or critiques or whatever it may have been, to make sure that we've completely complied with what's been asked of us here. There have been third-party reviews. Not just Ada County, but ACHD both reached out and had a third-party consultant review the reports that were submitted. And so it's been reviewed by multiple sets of eyes, and we do comply with the codes and ordinances for this planned community. This will be a quality development of which I will be very proud of, a legacy-type development, something I've wanted to do my entire career, and I'm very, very excited about it. With that in mind, there will be an implementation phase to follow. It will make sure that we do what we say we do, and you'll have another set of eyes to look at this at that time also. We agree with the staff report and all the findings have been submitted, and ask for your approval tonight of this comprehensive plan, map, and text change, and stand for any questions.
Thank you. What questions do the commissioners have? Questions? I wondered if you could explain to me how we take care of the sewer long-term, because you'll develop and you're going to develop it out in the next 17 years. So say that's 20 years and then it gets turned over to somebody, but who's going to make sure that the sewer is properly funded and properly operated? Because usually we have city.
Madam Chair, that's a great question. I appreciate your asking it. So I have researched the other planned communities in our valley, and we're going to follow the Avamore and the Dry Creek model, who actually, when they first build it, they have to maintain it themselves, meaning not, you have to have experts who are in that field, but someone has to finance it, build it, and kind of pay for it as you go. But there is a third-party agency that is their expertise, and so I know Avamore has sold their facility to that management company, and that would be our plan. Again, that's in the implementation phase, meaning I'll call it phase 2 of our application. You will see that when I bring that to you, at least some little more details to it. But that's how we envision doing it, is using some experts in the field for both the technical maintenance as well as the financing long-term. Now, just like I'm a resident of Boise, and I pay well, it's actually bi-monthly, but I pay a monthly sewer fee. And so there's not just sewer hookups that the builders will pay nominal or nothing, but then there's the ongoing monthly fee to take care of the processing. And that's how it is done, is through a monthly bill, just like I do in the city of Boise, or you might in the city of Kuna.
Thank you. What questions do you guys have? Mr. Birch?
So I noticed up there, it talks about a sustainable housing mix. What would the anticipation be between single-family homes and multifamily homes?
Madam Chair and Commissioner Birch, there is a mix, and let me break it down in a couple of ways for you. So, because it's really not two. So we have the single-family detached, we have single-family attached, call them townhomes or fourplexes, if you will, which the fourplexes will be for rent, the townhomes could be for sale or for rent, depending upon the mix, and then the apartments you're saying as well. Of that total number, and I just looked it up because I thought that question might be coming, apartments, the planned number is 250 doors for apartments. The number of single-family obviously is the bulk of it. You know, I don't know if it's 1,700, but something kind of close to that. And then the balance would be, doing a rough number here, but between 500 and 700 for the townhomes, fourplexes.
So what would the average lot size be of the single-family homes?
Madam Chair and Chairman Birch, the single-family detached homes, if that's okay, I want to go back to this slide, just show you a picture of what that is. Well, let's go to the better one. There we go. So the tan colors that you see there are the single-family detached, all of them. The ones on the south end along the golf course, call those estates, if you will. I mean, they're the larger ones. I don't want to call them acre lots. That would not be appropriate for an urban type or a subdivision with urban facilities. But a lot of those will be 8,000 to 10,000 square feet, to answer your question. Some of them are a little bit smaller, but that's kind of a range, is 8,000 to 10,000 square feet. I think we have some in the 12,000 square foot range too.
Okay, so we're talking custom homes that can be built there.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Birch, again, that'll be a mix. One of the things I think is important to note is our northwest corner, where 5 Mile Hubbard is, and kind of that's where our first phase will be. We'll call it Area A. In that design, I think we had 3 different product types, and we have some that are maybe 6,000 to 8,000 square foot lots. Again, not townhome lots, but 6,000 to 8,000. Those could be a production builder. When we reached out initially to a group of builders, we had again a broad mix of builders, and that is our intention. So I don't see this as one builder building it all, to answer if that's where you're going.
Right.
That is not the plan. There'll be a mix of probably some production builders for the smaller, again, trying to hit a market niche, so it's a little bit more affordable product, and definitely some custom builders for a large section of that too.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could add to that, we like local builders. I won't promise you they're not any regional builders, but really we want to work with our local builders as much as we can.
What other comments do we have? Questions? I probably am getting ahead of myself, but I read somewhere about the parks and about how we didn't need as many acres because the Hubbard Park was there. And there's not very much facilities there. So that's not a really good, in my opinion, that's not a really good reason not to have facilities here. So I guess in terms of thinking about the next phase, I would give you that comment that from a personal perspective, we'd like to see, if you're going to say that's the reason we're not having open space, then we should be making some improvements to that space to make it more usable.
Madam Chair, I will be happy to say on the record, you'll be pleased with the improvements we will be doing in the implementation phase. You will see community pools, you will see soccer fields, you will see, it'll be amazing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
What other questions do we have?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
So you said you spoke to the schools, and I do appreciate the elementary schools. It's outstanding that you're working with them on that. But, I mean, as we know, elementary is not where kids stop. So did they actually have any concerns about the future impact of such a large growth with middle schools in the area and high schools? Because as I said, you probably heard, they're really far away from where you're trying to build this right now. So do you have any comments on that by chance?
Yeah, Madam Chair and Commissioner Scott, thanks for the question. We have 2 school districts that we're working with. We're actually bisected. The western side is CUNA School District, and the center and eastern portion is West Ada School District. And both have different answers. That's why I have to give you the clarification. CUNA School District was pretty clear this is all they need, elementary school. Regardless, there's other developments in the western area. We've mentioned the Valor subdivision that's part of the Falcon Crest Golf Course. Those are actually mostly 55 and older community. There's some custom homes in that area too. But there's a plan, I believe CUNA Schools are trying to implement a 10-year plan at this time where they plan for all their school needs. And so we're supporting them in their plan, I guess the short answer. They've told us where they want that. West Ada has also had similar comments. The Locale subdivision, if I understand correctly, is also part of West Ada. And so as you look at that, they know they'll need a high school in that area, but they want to have it somewhat centralized between the two or maybe closer to Locale. Our route will be 10 Mile Creek Road to Pleasant Valley North and back to Cole Road, if you will. So they're working on that location. When we get to the implementation phase, they may have a different answer for us. We may have to have a different answer, but that's what they've told us this time. And so right now, they've asked specifically to preserve an elementary school site, knowing that it will be needed for this area. The other 2, they're working through that plan.
Okay. I'm sure just another question. So Boise City in their letter said that there was costly and potentially a cost of unplanned investment in transportation infrastructure. And I'm also kind of concerned of, fully aware ACHD has done their assessments and stuff with you guys, but I do have concerns of the east-west of 10 Mile Creek only being fed into Pleasant Valley and then eventually Cloverdale, whereas Cole and 5 Mile don't connect. And it doesn't look like that's going to be planned, that 5 Mile is going to connect into, and Cole is would be the main artery to the freeway from all the way down to Cole. So I'm concerned about a community of this size having access to where everyone's going to go, and that's Boise. And so are there any thoughts of, is this just in your initial stages right now, you're saying this is what we're looking to change, but eventually there's potential that we will assist with ACHD in connecting Cole all the way through down to I-84, or maybe even 5 Mile? Because if we're plopping Cloverdale as the main artery north-south and Pleasant Valley, which terminates at Gowan, that's going to be really ugly for traffic. So I'm just kind of getting your ideas there.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Scott, we are getting into the technicalities of it, but I'll give you a peek into the window, if you will. Based on the traffic impact study, there's a split of which way the traffic goes, east and west. The reason why multiple traffic impact studies, they want to make sure that it's accurate. Is it a 50-50 split? Is it 60-40 split? Is it 70-30 split? Is it east and west, one way or the other? We all want to make sure it's done correctly to make sure that our impacts and our mitigations are they match. So with that in mind, we fully expect we will be not only paying for impact fees, we will be paying for off-site mitigation. Not just for 10 Mile Creek Road, but also for Pleasant Valley and for the area Pleasant Valley near Gowan, if you will. ACHD does have a plan, by the way, within the next 5 years or so to do some connections in that area, which we actually, and they have suggested, and we all, I guess, agree, because it's the traffic experts, have said that there will be a lot of flow of traffic, like you said, to downtown Boise. So we see that as one of the main arteries, because once you get to the airport, then you're at Gowan, then you're Vista, you're headed to downtown Boise in that way. And so that's, if you're going east to downtown, that would be it. But if you're going to Micron, you just keep on going east, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to Meridian, well, now it's the other direction. We're going to Cloverdale, and then north and northwest. And so that's why all those intersections were studied, because not every driver will go to the same direction. And likewise, some would say, well, how come there's no shopping in the area. Well, again, that's a little bit of the implementation phase, but let me give you a little peek in the window. There's a planned grocery store at that Valor community by Falcon Crest. And so that's why there's complement, and why we work together. That's why that 5 mile is going to connect to the south. A lot of our residents are actually going to go south to Kuna Road to go shopping, or they'll just drive straight through Valor and not even go out to Kuna Road to get to the shopping. And so we recognize that connectivity that'll take place. And so, sorry for the long answer, but really, it's not a simple answer because there's a short-term need, which is today, and with our first phases, we will have off-site mitigation requirements. Hubbard Road, I'm sure we'll have to do some improvements immediately of Hubbard Road and 10 Mile Creek Road immediately with our first phases. And then as the density builds up, we'll have off-site improvements to Cloverdale and others too.
Madam Chair, just follow-up question.
One more question, yep.
So you said you were going to look to improve Pleasant Valley potentially all the way down to, to Gowan Road. Just from personal experience from my operations within the military, that's a tank trail as well. Have you spoken to Gowan, the Idaho National Guard at all about potentially what that would look like? Or has ACHD expressed any concerns about that? Because right adjacent to Pleasant Valley is the tank trail that those tanks drive down, and any kind of widening is obviously going to impact that because they don't want to tear up the pavement, so.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Scott, I'll make note of that.
Okay.
I mean, very direct answer, I don't know, but I will get an answer for you when
No
we
problem.
the
I just
implementation
wanted
phase.
something to think about.
One thing we do know is that's not in year 2.
Yeah.
That'll be longer term. But it doesn't matter because we need to have an answer for the full build out, not just for the first 5 years.
Yeah, because the Orchard Training Center is not going anywhere, so.
Yeah, and so we agree that we'll have answers for that in the implementation phase.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Just to get the big picture, it's about 200 houses a year that gets built.
Madam Chair, that's correct. Some years will be more and some will be less. It's not just single-family homes. That number would also include the apartments or the townhomes, so absorptions increase when you have a variety of housing types.
So is 200 housing units a year kind of the plan, or is it 300 or 400?
Madam Chair, if we take, I'm going to do quick math here. Again, it's a 20-year build-out, and so you divide that into almost 3,000. That's actually closer to 150 would be the average or less units per year. And again, that would include all the variety of housing types.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to get the big picture.
I don't see 300 per year unless it's like last year.
Okay, a really good
But
year.
this year is not that way, and so the average would be closer to 150 or less.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Okay, we'll let you sit down, and we've got some other people to talk to.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Betty, if you want to come forward and give us your name and address and give us your comments. And we are going to limit it to 3 minutes, so.
Betty Berman Solo, 1970 Cananero Way, Boise, Idaho. Again, I'm speaking on behalf of the Southwest Ada County Alliance and urge the commissioners to look at the previous letters sent by the earlier commission October 7th, 2019 regarding this development and discouraging that move at this point. And as well as Mrs. Marissa Keith's letter of January 13th. And I think it brings up, our concerns mainly are that planned developments of this kind don't make the same mistakes that were made previously. And if there are conditions, if this is approved at this point, and there are conditions that protect the limited resources that Ada County is collecting right now to take care of the needs along Overland Road, along Cloverdale, and don't jump into spending those limited resources on something that is going to be years before anything comes back to serve the other Ada County residents that have been here waiting. So I'm hoping that there's a number of conditions of approval during the phasing, the implementation, and specifying what has to be in place in terms of infrastructure there, as well as putting some concern towards serving the people that have been there for years to come. And I would imagine Mr. Jorgensen and everyone that lives here understands the situation we've been working with for some years now. And some of them are safety issues regarding transportation that we've witnessed on Cloverdale. So I urge the commissioners, if you go forward and approve this, look at making sure that there's some preference given to where those finances coming in, impact fees from ACHD. It's going to be a long time before we get served adequately with needs that we have on 5 Mile Road, Maple Grove. It's a nightmare in those areas if you're not familiar with the high density that's there without adequate roadways, and we're still waiting. So I'm hoping that this commission will keep that in mind as you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comment. Gary Briggs?
Gary Briggs, 9000 West Cuna Road. I am representing myself and the Cuna East Water Corporation. We have a well, we have property. If you can just get one of your bigger pictures, I'll show you. We're very concerned about the water table, and that we may lose our irrigation well that's been in there for 60 years. So we're located, Cuna East Water Corporation has all of this property in here under a well that is placed on this ridge up here.
Sir, but can you show us over here? I'm sorry, we can't see.
We'll give you another, we'll give you a couple. We can't see that one.
I'm tall enough. So Cuna East Irrigation, we're from here, down here, up here, and then clear over to this part here. We got 170 acres. Our well is located right here in this upper corner. So we're on the ridge just south of this proposed development. And last August, my house is about a half a mile south of this development. We lost our well that was 40 years old and had to dig a new well. We had to dig another 140 feet to get to good water. And that cost us over $90,000 with the well, the pump, and the upgrade and the electricity. And we're very concerned, the corporation is, that if our irrigation well goes dry and there's no safeguards for the water they're going to be using, and if our well does go dry in the next couple of years, it'll probably just turn all of our property into dry land, because I don't think the corporation can afford the cost now that it's going to cost us to drill a newer, deeper well to keep irrigating our property that we've had. It's been in place for 60 years. So that's one of our main concerns is, before you approve this, they do have existing wells that they're running, but when you put all those houses in there, they're not on a 6-month irrigation schedule. They're on a 12-month, every day, all day schedule of using water. And we only use our irrigation pump 6 months out of the year. But that's, I'm assuming, what they do. A lot of that ground hasn't been farmed. It's been abandoned. Some of it that's wetter. There is pasture and grazing stuff. It's real pretty, but it is down in a ravine. They've got no views from either side. You can't see the Boise Mountains, the Hawaii Mountains, but and it's not probably really good farm ground. They must have water issues currently that they don't farm it, is what concerns us. They've put pivot lines in that they've abandoned and wheel lines that they've abandoned over the years. So we're really concerned about our water source. And if I sit down, can I talk about my other issue? the traffic, or?
I'm going to give you
get 3
another
minutes
minute
and that's
because we
it?
wanted you to point out, because we asked you questions. I'm going to give you another minute because we asked you questions. So go ahead and give us another.
Okay, the other thing is what she mentioned, the traffic. There's a reason that Cole Road doesn't come all the way south from Boise, and the reason that 5 Mile is because there is a large hill to get to. And Pleasant Valley Road is really the only one that addresses that. And there's at least 6 gravel companies on Pleasant Valley Road that are running gravel back and forth. And where 10 Mile Road butts into Pleasant Valley, there's very little view. That's on a big hill. I think that's going to be a very, very dangerous intersection, and it's going to really mess up. I can't believe the gravel companies aren't here, because it's going to really make it difficult for them to get all their trucks in and out of there with all the extra traffic going that way. So it's going to be a big impact. And they mentioned several times how this project's going to complement things. I don't see it complementing the traffic, and I don't see it complementing the water table. And I just wish more people would put forth the effort that you've made available for us. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your
Hang on
comments.
can I
Yes,
ask
I'm
a
sorry. Mr. Briggs?
Yes.
Commissioner Colson has a question.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm hard of hearing.
Yeah,
I
it's-
have-
you're all right.
It's-
You're all right.
It's unusual, but he has a question.
It's
so.
okay. How deep is your well?
We had to drill our domestic well from 320 to 440 to get to water. And so that meant that our existing pump and electricity, we had to put in a bigger pump. Our irrigation well is about that much, that 440, but it's higher than our house well. But our concern is they're 200 feet lower than us,
Yeah,
the
I'm good.
valley is. So if we're to get down to their level, we might be at the 600, 700 foot if it goes down that way.
I'm aware of where all that is. So thank you. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Tim Keen? Is there a Tim Keen in the room?
He left. The Boise planner, he left.
Okay. Rick Boardman?
Chair, Commissioners, Richard Boardman, 999 Cowhorse Drive, Ada County. My wife and I have lived on our property for about 31 years. It's about a mile as the crow flies from this proposed development. I am not against the development. I'm hedging my bets on that. I'm against this application. Part of the reason, I'm going to talk quick here because I've only got 3 minutes and I know I've got a lot to cover. Part of that is because you have outdated, incomplete, and inaccurate information in front of you on this application. I have spent hours poring over this, sifting through this. As an example, the absorption report has quoted very outdated, at least 10 years outdated, largest employer in the Boise Valley information. That in and of itself maybe isn't a big deal. We all know that the jobs around here are pretty, a lot of volume of jobs, but that is an example, and I can give you other examples throughout the 1,000 pages of this application of inaccurate, outdated, and incomplete information. And I bring that up as an example and mention this. And please don't think that I'm trying to be patronizing, but somebody has not done their homework in going through the accuracy of this information. I'll give you more examples. The reason that's important is I think you know that if this commission's decision, much less the board's ultimate decision on this project, is ever subject to judicial review, it is subject to a standard of being arbitrary and capricious. If you have inaccurate, incomplete, outdated information, that is a fundamental basis for an argument that it is arbitrary and capricious. Let's talk a little bit about the traffic. Commissioner Scott, I'm glad you brought that up, and the previous commenter mentioned that. Cole Road's never going to go through because immediately to the north of 10 Mile Creek Road is probably the most productive aggregate source in this valley. As was mentioned, there are multiple gravel pits there with mineral rights. Ada County has its own gravel pit on 10 Mile Creek Road. And behind that is all BLM. Cole Road is not going through. Everybody is going to go to Cloverdale and go south from there, or perhaps north and into Cuna, unless they work at Micron. But most of this traffic volume is going to go through Cloverdale after it hits Hubbard. Now, let's talk, that's a segue for the traffic impact statement. If I may continue, the traffic impact statement includes proposals for Cloverdale to be expanded to 7 lanes in one 1-mile segment and 5 lanes in several others. Can we get real here? 7 lanes on Cloverdale in order to support this? The other problem, and I'll end my discussion right now, I appreciate the little bit of extra time. All the traffic impact statement that was done by Kemley Horn, which also has inaccurate information in it, did not take into account the traffic that is going to be flowing down the same thoroughfares, Cloverdale and Cuna Road and all the other roads impacted as a result of the Falcon Crest development. I would ask you to ask the developer, to ask staff if they are able to confirm that in the traffic impact, in the projections that Kemley Horn did on the TIS, whether they took into account the traffic that is coming down as a result of the 2,500 homes. I've spent hours going over this. I dove into Compass statistics and data. I can't imagine why somebody would go, well, okay, here's going to be the traffic in 5 years, in 17 years, and they're not taking into account the development that is now annexed into the city of Cuna and that whole traffic. Please ask somebody that question. And if somebody can confirm, oh yes, Kemley Horn took that into account, and ACHD supposedly blessed it with all kinds of conditions, then I'll sit down and shut up. But I look into it. That Kemley Horn report is hundreds of pages. I couldn't find anything that indicated. Wouldn't you think that another development that's within a half mile of 2,700 homes, total 5,000 plus homes, that somebody would take into account the traffic from that?
Thank you.
This isn't rocket science.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. I
We
appreciate
it.
your consideration.
That's everybody that's on my list. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to make a comment? Go ahead. Give us your name and address.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Steve Inch. My address is on Red Shine Way, down in the Hazelwood Village subdivision.
So we need your exact.
6697 South Red Shine Way.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. I've been a resident of Boise for over 30 years. Recently, I've been in Southeast, and to provide a little perspective, I think it might be warranted. And that has to do with, if you look at what the thoughtful planning that they've done for this development and compare it to what Bound Crossing is. Compare it to the Pete O'Neill developments in the southeast of Boise. And you can really see, this is less residential growth than you have in Harris Ranch. And you have Park Center Boulevard that more than accommodates 3,000 plus homes in Harris Ranch. And I have been commuting on Cloverdale, and there are times when it can be a complete nightmare right now. However, I believe they are widening Cloverdale, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe it won't be a problem from the perspective of the number of homes that are going into this area. I think it's a very thoughtfully planned vision for the development, and look forward to buying a home there. So,
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to make a comment?
Hi, my name is Alan Pio. I live on 11457 South Cloverdale Road in Kuna, Idaho. I'd like to give my time, if I may, to Rick for more of his concerns about this development.
You know, we don't do that
Don't do
at
it?
planning and
Okay.
zoning, so just tell us what your
Well, my concern,
concerns are.
I'm sorry,
It's okay.
Chairman. My concern is what a lot of them have been saying, is the traffic is very horrible on that road. Like the gentleman just said, that they are trying to widen the road, but unfortunately, it's a lot of the major development that matters for this development is going to be another, 20 years because of how much traffic flow is already on Cloverdale. And with 5 Mile not going anywhere, everybody's going to go to Cloverdale. And it's going right past my road right currently now, where I have so much traffic going in there. Just trying to get onto the street itself is already going to be a problem. And if we have another 5,000 from Valor and to this development getting on at the same time, there is no way that it's going to be safe for anybody to be on there, especially if they don't do the roads, widen it here within the next few years, which I know that is not going to happen. So that's what my concern is even the safety of people driving on that road where people pass on the double yellow lines. There's not enough policemen out there to kind of help survey the problems that is going on in every traffic flow that is going on through there. And then, like you're saying, for the schools, if kids are trying to wait for the buses out there, where are they going to be going to? They have more of an accident waiting to happen with them, with all the traffic that will be going through that roadway. So that is my concern about this development and everything that is going to impact for this place. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else in the room that would like to make a comment about this project? Okay, now we'll go back to questions for the planner. What questions do the commissioners have? Commissioner Exton.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering if you could talk about the phased approach with a planned community, because I believe the last time we saw one was Dry Creek Ranch for the school. So I assume that process would take place in like round 2, so to speak, of this coming before us if it does get approved by us or the Board of County Commissioners for the actual implementation side, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Exton, yes, so the schools are designated on the future land use map, the comprehensive plan. But yeah, they would also be part of that implementation plan, probably be more details potentially. But I guess when they're actually constructed will kind of ultimately fall onto the school districts.
What I was wondering more was when we saw the Dry Creek Ranch one, there was that stipulation where it's like until you can move to like phase 2, all of these conditions had to be met before you can move to the next spot of the full planned community. I assume for this, if this does get ultimately approved, that kind of framework would happen in round 2, not like right now, obviously, correct?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Exton, yes, sorry. That's correct. For the implementation plan, the second phase is where there would be much more conditions included. So that's where that specificity would come into play, and Planning and Zoning Commission and the board could add specific conditions for each phase. And the applicant would be required to submit a detailed phasing plan as part of the implementation plan. So yeah, you would get more details in that stage and be able to add more conditions there.
Okay, thank you.
What are the questions?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Scott?
Would they be drawing, and this might be for the applicant, but would they be drawing their irrigation from the same well as the CUNA district, or would they be drawing it off New York Canal, which is relatively close to?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Scott, they would be using their existing water rights. They did detail the water rights they have on the property. They have, like they mentioned, 2 existing wells on their property they're irrigating part of the property with now. But that's applicant may have more detail than that, but they would be using their existing water rights They already have existing wells to irrigate some of the property.
And then just kind of for my education on the process, is this necessarily an approval for like the whole project and they just go forward and drive on? Or is this like approving the general concept and then they'd have to come back with when they move to like phase 1, then come back phase 2 for what their plans for what they're building?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Scott. Yeah, this is just kind of the broad overview. A plan, this approval of this application gives them the ability to submit the second application. So in general, it designates the property as a planned community, but this doesn't grant them any development rights. It just gives them essentially the right to move on to the second step, the second phase of the application.
Okay, and then just one final question. Is there any way, and again, it's just a process question, is there any way to, I don't necessarily want to like kick this back to get more, or I know this is two organizations competing here to see if ACHD can relook it, or is that a bridge too far, or am I overstepping because it's a separate entity?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Scott. Yeah, they've, as mentioned, the applicant did hire Kimley Horn to develop their traffic impact study. ACHD did review that. They actually hired another consultant to help in the review of that impact study. And there's been several different updates submitted through the process. ACHD's asked for more information. The applicant's given that. So it's been several months, the applicant working with ACHD in their traffic impact study. But ultimately, the approval of that study is through ACHD, and as you're all aware, they have ultimate decision on what roadway improvements get made. But it has been several months that they have been reviewing that plan in detail.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
So yeah, ACHD is the ultimate deciding factor of what has to be done for the development, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Colson, as far as roadway improvements, that's correct. All their roads would have to meet ACHD's requirements. ACHD would have to approve of any of the roads they build, and then they would tell them which off-site improvements they would need to make.
Correct. They're the ones analyzing the data. Even obviously, you said they hired someone outside of the applicant hiring somebody, so therefore they're doing their due diligence of taking everything into consideration. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Colson, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any more questions? I wondered if you could talk to me about the water table issues, like what's our responsibilities versus, because I know there's another group that handles groundwater, and then there's another group that handles surface water. I found that out because I had two competing places I went to. So if you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Madam Chair. So I guess just as an overview, as was mentioned, the potable water will come from Veolia, from wells off-site, the existing wells off-site. But as far as the irrigation water, they will be using their existing water rights. They did detail in their report the water rights they do have. And of course, IDWR does approve wells ultimately, any new wells that are built. Yeah, as far as I said, the applicant may provide more detail, but they did demonstrate in their application they have water rights from their property to irrigate the portions they're proposing to irrigate.
So the Viola water rights is coming from their existing wells that they already have permits for to deliver the drinking water.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that's correct. Veolia will use their existing wells located pretty far from the site, already existing, and water will have to be piped to the property by the applicant from those Veolia wells to the property. Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, do you know what the water table is out there on that property?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Colson, I don't know. That applicant may have more information.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the comment that was made by one of the parties about the traffic studies not being accurate, do you have any knowledge that the traffic studies aren't accurate, or can you make any comments about that
Madam
comment?
Chair, yeah, we do defer to ACHD as far as traffic impact studies. Though, as was mentioned in the staff report, Ada County did hire an outside consultant just to look at three of the areas of the plan. They did look at the traffic impact study, the wildlife and natural resources study, and the economic study. So we actually had a consultant, Jacobs, that the county hired. We've done this for our past planned communities just to double check some of the technical reports. And they didn't have any major concerns with it. But ultimately, again, ACHD is the one that approves the studies. They're experts. And again, they hired an outside consultant to assist them with their review.
Madam Chair, to that point as well, ACHD has required an updated TIS for each phase. So in the event that growth continues in the area, the updated TISs would need to account for what's happening. So it's not everything today and that's all the traffic we're going to get. They're going to keep looking at how the area is growing and figuring out what the impacts will be and what the necessary improvements should be, and whether or not a project can grow to a certain size or not. So.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. Any other questions before we ask the applicant to come back up and provide this rebuttal? Okay, I don't see any more questions. We'll go ahead and ask the applicant to provide his rebuttal, and then we'll go along the process.
Good evening. Again, for the record, Dave Jorgensen, applicant. So I wrote down a few notes here, and I would just make a couple comments. First, regarding Betty Burbasolo's comments on Marissa Keith's letter. I haven't read it, but I agree with what she said. There will be conditions added to this development as we move forward to the implementation phase. And we've been reaching out, we've been listening to what the concerns are. And we've heard a lot of comments about phasing, about offsite, about traffic, and those types of things. And we really have to try to take a different approach to this. We've listened to ACHD, and they're the ones who've determined the scope of the study. We didn't decide what roads to study. They did, for example. There's lots of other discussions. I'll even maybe lead to the next one. I appreciate the comments about irrigation wells. We are not drilling new wells on this site. We're using existing surface water rights that have been used for a long period of time to irrigate this property for the purpose of grazing. And we're just instead using it for pressurized irrigation for our common areas and for our yards. In fact, we're going to put in, as been identified in our sustainability and resiliency portion of the project, or of the plan, where we actually call out and we'll have some conservation measures in place to try to be more careful in our water usage. We recognize water usage is water's finite, and we're not out here to be a pig of water users, if you will, but rather we'll be only using our water right and being cautious in that water use as well. With regard to traffic and the comment about outdated, incomplete info, I didn't hear any other than an accusation the absorption report was old. I would just say all these reports are about 1 year old, not 10 years old reports. There was a study and analysis that were done in a variety of topics, of which we already covered. And so I don't know if, happy to meet with Mr. Boardman afterwards to see where the concern might be, but our intent is never to use old, outdated information. This application was already submitted to the county staff and reviewed by a third-party reviewer as well as staff. We don't believe there's any outdated or misleading information has been suggested here tonight. I think I've answered your general questions, but I know you might have a few specific ones. I did write down the comment about phasing and specific about traffic. When ACHD asked us to do a traffic impact study, there are multiple portions. There's a reason why it's hundreds of pages long. There's a reason why. It's because the scope is large. We studied 17 intersections plus multiple roads out beyond those intersections. But then we study the existing conditions, something that's called background traffic, which includes all approved development, and then the impacts of the new development. So all three are analyzed, and that's what's in the traffic impact study. Pretty confident that Kimley Horn captured all that because ACHD told them what those numbers are. And then as staff has recognized, here at the county, there's a third-party reviewer. So we've had county's Jacobs consultant, we've had ACHD review it, we've had ACHD's third-party consultant, and our traffic. So 4 different eyes have looked at it. I think we've covered the review. Again, more information will be provided to the county in our implementation phase. We will have multiple traffic impact studies to make sure that we address with each phase. Because we agree there will be more development in the area. We know about Valor. We want to capture all that traffic and make sure that they're doing their fair share and we will do our fair share. with all the road widening of Cloverdale, which is stated as a concern. With that, Madam Chair, I just want to say one last thing. This is the first step of the process. We're thrilled to be to this point because I really have a big vision of making this a beautiful community and something which I will be very proud of for a long period of time. That's how I do developments, by the way. I drive around, 5, 10 years later, what do they look like? I like how it turned out. I'm happy to stand behind any one of my communities I've built in the last 25 years in this community for that exact reason. And this will be another one. With that, I stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you. What questions do we have? What questions do you have? No questions?
Okay.
I think we've exhausted all the questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you again for your time.
Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I'll look to the commissioners for a motion to approve this development, table it, or deny it. Commissioner Birch.
I know we'll have an opportunity to discuss after the motion is made, so with that, based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained in the staff report, the commission recommends approval of project number 2022-02476-PC-CPA to the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you very much. Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Commissioner Exton seconded the motion. Commissioner Birch, I'll let you talk about it.
No, I mean, frankly, I've been astonished that a proposed subdivision was not recommended for this property for years. I mean, I've driven down it many times. I'm familiar with it. And as has been pointed out, this is the first rung of a tall ladder. And so there's a lot of other steps that have to be met before this is going to be a reality. We're not approving 3,000 housing units. We're approving the first step so they can go forward to see whether or not they can meet all of the requirements that the government's going to impose to allow this development to happen. I don't think we as a body should be saying that because of current traffic issues that can be solved by the governmental entity, that we should deny the ability of a property owner to sell their property and use it for a logical use. Am I happy that some of the developments have taken place? No. I mean, like many people, I wanted to move here and then slam the door so nobody else could come in. But that's not reality. Relatively newcomer here. I've only been here for about 25 years. But I'm not happy seeing Mayfield get developed. When I saw this application, I thought pretty soon they're going to want to develop Orchard. That was the very next thing that we had, the next application that followed this one on the agenda. I think that the plan looks like a good plan, but it will only be good if the requirements are met to satisfy the needs concerning traffic, schools, fire, police protection, everything else that goes with it. That's not our job to determine what's going to go with it. I think that it's well thought out, and I think we deserve to give them the opportunity to move to the next step.
Commissioner Exton?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with everything Commissioner Birch said. You know, this is very much that first step of a very long ladder. I also agree. I think this is an extremely well thought out plan, especially because it is right next to Valor. I think it's more consistent in that aspect rather than something like Avamore where there's nothing like it surrounding it. So I think in that aspect it makes sense because it's literally right next to it. You know, the issues with the traffic, I do think, you know, the applicant has, you know, stated multiple times over that they are more than willing to make all of these off-site improvements to the roadways. Obviously, that conversation will be between ACHD and the applicant, not us. But I think the infrastructure to make those decisions is there to improve the infrastructure. Didn't mean to make a pun there. And with the water, you know, there are those other agencies. The fact that the applicant isn't drilling new wells, they're piping in all of the potable water. I think that's a good, you know, check and balance there, so to speak, of the water use. But yeah, I think, you know, something like this, especially because there will be all of those other, you know, logistical steps along the way, whether it being just the Board of County Commissioners coming back to us for round 2, so to speak, if it does pass the Board of County Commissioners, that very detailed phasing plan with having to meet all the requirements before the next step. I do think, this could definitely be a wonderful community project. And I echo Commissioner Birch. I don't think we should be the ones to say no right off the bat and not even give them a chance to explore what this could be.
Any other comments? Mr. Colson?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I live really close to this property, and honestly, I love the concept. I love the idea about this as a community. What I love about what they put in front of us here is they take all people in consideration. So it's not Avamore where you're 800 to $1 million homes, and it's just stuck that way. I mean, you're taking in the people that can't, lower income house apartments, people that want the 8,000 to 10,000 lots. I mean, you're bringing a community all together versus separating them in one full community versus a subdivision of just this. Not to mention bringing commercial and everything, just exactly what a lot of people are always concerned about is having to travel too far to go get something to eat or something else like that. Bottom line is it's taken everybody into consideration, and that's what I love about the development. Other than that, unfortunately, it might block the lights of me seeing the prison at night, but I'm totally for the project.
Go ahead, Commissioner Scott.
So, as I've voiced before, I've had serious concerns about the traffic in the schools. However, that being said, I have to defer to the experts in those areas. We have school districts that make those decisions and are smarter than me on schools. We have ACHD and highway planners that make those decisions and look at this stuff, and they get the outside consults and do the work, and we have to trust that they do the type of thing just like they trust that we do the right thing when it comes to planning and zoning. So while I do have reservations on traffic, I will trust that ACHD, especially with the idea that we're going to go through phased updates to impact of traffic as the phases are grown. And I do like all the other commissioners said, this is a really nice looking community. It really is. I like the open spaces. I like the internal commercial. So it's like a community, almost like a village that's there that they can work and play and shop somewhat together. I really appreciate that they are working with the schools, that they are looking to, at least for the elementary schools, build those as well as integrate with police and fire, especially with CUNA. And I've read many of the letters. There's a lot of neighbors in here in the letters that are saying that they support it and they think that it's going to be something good. And I agree with Commissioner Birch. This is the first rung. If they come back and say we want to build like a 40-story high-rise, that we can cross that bridge at that point. But for now, I would like to see where this goes. So while I have reservations on traffic, I'll defer to ACHD on that and West Ada and CUNA schools for the schools. So I will also approve this as well.
I live near 3 of the corners that are those future corners that have traffic impacts along Columbia. And so several of those corners so the traffic from this area is going to impact my house. But I also know that in order for ACHD to improve everything that's south of the freeway, we need to have some impact fees, and it's got to come from somewhere in order to do those, and it needs to be phased, and it needs to happen over time. And so I can appreciate that the applicant is working with ACHD to fund some of those off-sites improvements, to provide some upgrades to the traffic in the area. I also appreciate that the developer worked with the police and the fire department to come up with some creative solutions to fund those things ahead of time. That community investment, I think, makes a big difference. It's really a pretty development, and I think it'll be attractive housing for a wide variety of people which we do need in this area. And there is going to be a lot more employment in that South Cuna corridor along the Cunamora or the Blacks Creek exit area. So I expect to see more places for people to work in that area and people being located closer to those places. So those are my comments. Any more comments? And I guess my final comment is I appreciate the parks that are there, and I hope that they consider even more. So, more parks. So,
Chair, I
ahead.
just want to thank everyone for coming and being respectful. A lot of land use things get very heated, and we've seen it before. So appreciate everyone coming by, voicing their concerns, and making this a community event. So thank you.
I appreciate it, too. Any more comments? So I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of a motion to approve, or send this application to the Board of Commissioners with approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed? And so let the minutes reflect that the motion passed. Our next item on the agenda is we were going to do I don't have my thing open. We're going to do an elections for commissioner, or for chair and vice chair. So is there anybody that can make a motion for Commissioner Exton?
I would like to move to nominate Commissioner James Birch as the chair for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any comments?
I just think, Commissioner Birch has done a fabulous job as vice chair, and in the moments where he has had to serve as chair, it's been very smooth.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
So, any more comments? I think we'll just go ahead and vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So Commissioner Birch has been elected as chair, and now we'll look for a motion for vice chair.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Colson.
I'd like to ask Mr. Exton to be vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. It's moved and seconded that Commissioner Exton is vice chair. Any comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So Commissioner Exton is vice chair. The next item is our minutes from January 19th, 2023. I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes. I know, you got to be quicker on that. If you want to talk, you got to be quicker.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the minutes from the January 19th meeting.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from January 19th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And I'll say aye. Any opposed? So the minutes, Commissioner, let the minutes reflect that Commissioner Birch abstained from that vote. So all those, I think we're done. Thank you.
All right.
I heard there was 80 people here last night.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, or, boy, I better stop. I'll probably call you Madam Chair a few times. Apologize in advance. Hopefully we all laugh about it. I actually called former Mayor Beater Madam Mayor once. And he was going to try to fire me on the spot, so please don't be as harsh. But anyways, yes, it was a bit of a packed house for two items, which I'll get to in just a sec. Let me walk through these just first to last. First was a variance associated with some structures up in the northeast Boise foothills area, Wild Horse Lane. They've tabled that to April. They are continuing to try to work out a deal with their neighbor that would allow a property boundary adjustment, which would eliminate the need for a variance. So we're giving them time to try to go figure that out. Another project, the second project was a variance for accessory structure to exceed the allowed height of 24 feet. It was a gentleman who is vision impaired and his wife who wanted to create a viewing deck to see the mountains out of their backyard. And not that was the reason to approve the variance, but it was a touching story, and we spent a lot of time kind of working through the details of that, and ultimately that was approved by our board. The third one was the RV park that you guys saw out there on Vallejo Lane. That was, so state law requires whenever there's I believe it's material change, let me find the exact term here. and I don't think we have it listed. It's either material or fundamental change to your recommendation on the comp plan amendment. The board has to then hold 2 hearings to ratify if they're going to disagree with you. And so on that one, you all recommend denial of that RV park. The board wanted to approve it, or stated they were inclined to approve it, which then prompted that second hearing. We thought the second hearing was going to be a little quieter than the first one. It actually probably was noisier. So there were a lot of folks there to talk about it, both pro and con. The board took in a lot of testimony and ultimately tabled the project to consider that testimony and allow a limited amount of additional written testimony and a rebuttal from the applicant. So that was tabled to a meeting in the next 3 weeks that will be, ultimately that will be decided at an open business meeting versus a public hearing. But yeah, very robust conversation, lots of lawyers in the room. So, you know, as planners, the more lawyers in the room, usually the scarier the situation. So, but it was a good conversation all around. The board did a great job of fielding a lot of diverse comments, and they're taking all of that under consideration. And if you want to ask questions about any of those, feel free. And we can talk about it at the end as well. The next item was the fuel station out there on 10 Mile and Amity. That was approved by the board, and so they tabled that for revised findings to reflect that decision, which you recommended that they approve that project. So, yeah, we'll have a new gas station out there on 10 Mile and Amity in the next 12 to 18 months, most likely. And then finally, there was the Rolling Hills Vineyard Winery, which you heard and approved, and that was ultimately appealed to the board. That was the other big one, probably 2 hours plus of testimony and consideration, and the board did table that one as well, and they are going to deliberate at an open business meeting and make a decision at that point. So that sums up all of the applications that we heard last night. It was around midnight when we got out of here yesterday, so thank you for getting done at 9. I really appreciate that. And also congratulations to the new elected leadership. I've loved working with all of you, and so now I'll try to do my best to get the name of your position correct. You know me, I'm not a very formal guy, so I apologize in advance for some of my leniency when it comes to Robert's rules, but I will do my best to respect the positions that you hold on the commission. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
I don't think we have any questions.
Okay, well then have a good night. So
Yeah.
thank you. I'll bring
Get out of here before midnight, right?
So I think we'll have, gosh, now I have to think of who has to sign the order pages, because I guess you were technically the chair at the time, so we'll probably have you sign those for this meeting. And then moving forward, we'll have Commissioner Birch. So I'll bring those to you here in just a second.
Well, I can sign these minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.